It's playoff time, baby. Tonight is the Cover One Playoff Extravaganza. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Playoff Extravaganza. Aaron, it's playoff time. How we doing?
Dude, honestly, so we did the preview show yesterday, which if you haven't watched that, don't stop what you're doing now, but you can go watch that later. I encourage you to do that. And I had some real nervous energy right here. Novocaine saying, is Aaron Quinn still, AQ still nervous mafia? I was until I woke up this morning and I saw Kyle Williams is the legends of the game. And guys, I could run through a goddamn wall right now. I'm not even lying. Kyle Williams is the man. I love him. So I feel better than I've ever felt. But I'm sure some of our guests tonight are going to bring me back down to reality of this matchup specifically and just how hard the playoffs are going to be in general. So I'm looking forward to it, though. I'm glad that, Greg, that you made time. This is 2 nights in a row. You're hanging out with me more than you're hanging out with your family. So I appreciate you making time and all of our great guests who said yes to come on tonight. I'm appreciative of everybody before we get started.
Absolutely. So I'm going to call out one of our comments in the chat right off the bat because it really touched my heart and it was really, really cool. It's Jennifer here saying, hi from Ireland. I'm not a social media user, but created a YouTube profile specifically to say how much I love listening to Cover One Bills after watching the game in Dublin. Love you guys. Go Bills. This is exactly why the excitement is here, is that I know that at some point, we are all going to be together and a part of watching the first championship in Buffalo Bills history. And I hope it's this year. Maybe it's this year, but I know it's going to happen. And that's the excitement and the reason that we do this. And we're so excited. So without further ado, Aaron has worked diligently to set up a list of 5 guests here tonight. And the first one, we're kicking things off right at the top. Our man, friend of the show, Brett Kollmann. How we doing, sir?
Speaking of Ireland, we might get an NFL game in Ireland this coming season.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go out there to the
non-zero chance that it's the Bills because I know the commitment is it's Pittsburgh and they're going to be the host of the game, and the Bills are one of the 8 Pittsburgh Steelers away games, home games for the Steelers. So we're on that list.
We have a 1 in 8 chance.
We got a 1 in 8 shot, and honestly, it's probably more like a 1 in 5 shot because they don't like doing the division games overseas. Right. So there's a 1 in 5 shot that it's the Bills game. We'll see.
Are there 2 cultures that are more similar than Ireland and Buffalo, New York? I'm not sure. I feel like they would get along pretty well.
I think we've got the
famously
second or third. I think it's the 3rd biggest St. Patty's Day parade is in Buffalo, New York. Yeah. Huge South Buffalo, ton of Irish population there. So yeah, it'd fit right. And I think, Greg, we might have to see what the finances have in store for maybe a Cover One golf trip out to Ireland to go watch the game. I don't know. Maybe I'm just throwing it out there. I think Tilt's in here.
I have heard through the grapevine late September.
Perfect.
It's going to be. So it's still decent golf weather.
A fantastic time to go there.
Yeah, drinking and golf sounds good. We'll see you out there, Brett.
I do plan on going either this summer or for the game itself. Me and EJ will both be out there. So
I love that for you, man. Brett, not that I don't think anyone here, if anyone's watching us jabronis, they for sure know who you are and what you do. But for the off chance that there's some uncle of mine on Facebook watching, just give people a heads up of who you are and why we have you come on here and talk to us.
So my name is Brett Kollmann. I cover the entire league. Grew up a Texans fan. It also happen to work for the Chargers right now. So this is a terrible week for me. This is the worst case scenario. Yeah. And then my dad moved to Chicago when I was growing up, so I adopted the Bears as my NFC team. So I'm just in a world of hurt this entire year. But I cover the entire NFL. And I both work for myself, and I do the Bootleg Football podcast, and I work with the league, and I've gotten to do a whole bunch of fun stuff this year through the league, like doing a retro film study breakdown on the 2008 AFC Championship. The Jets graciously lent me MetLife Stadium to shoot a 2009 Darrelle Revis video in. I did not realize what the drought era Bills really looked like on tape. You guys have been through a lot.
A lot of scar tissue here.
Yeah. 2009 tape was not fun.
One very small sliver we had to cling to during there was a really weird spot where Darrelle Revis was legitimately the best cornerback in the NFL, except Stevie Johnson was so weird that he could legitimately give it to Revis here and there.
Yeah.
It was like this super weird, like no one was like trying to say that Stevie was, better than, but like just somehow his style, like the styles make fights thing.
Yeah.
Somehow his unorthodox, like basketball crossover style of route running was the only person who could give Revis problems. And it's like the one thing we had to cling to during that window. Like it was like a cool thing that we had. That was it.
I was doing the film study for that video, and that was the TO year. So TO was in Buffalo that year in 2009.
Yep.
And I swear to God, in that game, they threw it to TO against Revis 4 times in a row, back to back to back to back. And they didn't get anything on him. Like, guys, there's another 50 yards of the field you can use. And they were just like, nope, we're going to go after Darrelle. Didn't go super well. But,
didn't for most teams that would try to go after.
Almost no.
Here's my hot take of that drought era. And I don't know if you looked much at JP Losman tape, but I think
not on purpose.
Yeah. But I think JP Losman was ahead of his time, and the NFL didn't know how to deal with QBs like him, because now he's like the prototypical guy you would want coming out. Like had okay size, but be able to move, extend plays, kind of unorthodox, make all the throws. And I just don't think the Bills knew how to handle him.
Yeah.
No, it's all right.
He might have been Will Levisy, but he had a chance to
not be Will Levisy. Yes.
Yeah. If Andy Reid was the Bills coach in the late 2000s, he would have been fine.
That's it, man. So Brett, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say, I had my first question, and just kind of as we're looking here, you have a great perspective on the league overall. And I want to ask, one, because I think some people think the answer could be involved in this game on Sunday. I think the general consensus is, there's a defined top 3 in the AFC. There's a defined top 3 in the NFC, and it's just going to be whoever makes it out of KC, Buffalo, and Baltimore, whoever makes it out of Detroit, Minnesota, and Philly. It's going to be, one of those 3 on each side, and then we'll get a Super Bowl from there. One, do you think, that's sound in where it comes from? And if not, or even if it is reasonable, where do you maybe think there could be a surprise on each side of the bracket if somebody was going to break through?
It's funny because I was looking at the lines in the AFC side, and I want to preface this by saying I do think Buffalo's going to win. 8.5 points is egregious, right? That's pretty. Like, this is going to be a way tighter game than people think. I'm not just thinking Buffalo's going to breeze through this. I think Baltimore is going to breeze through Pittsburgh, and if I had to guess on Texans Chargers, I feel like Chargers are probably going to pull that one out. But the AFC is way closer than I think. Like, there is an established top 3. The gap isn't that big, and I do think that Denver is going to give Buffalo a game this week. I would say Buffalo probably wins by 3 or 4, but like the 8.5 line, like, and I know you guys are Bills fans. When you looked at that, you're like, no way, it can't.
I thought it might be a touchdown, but then it got over the 7.
I saw 9.5 one place.
I
saw 10 for a second.
What I hate about that is it fuels fire for the underdog. For really, sure. That's insulting when you start to get a 9.5. Like, they are a playoff team,
Well, and it does bring. I mean, I teased Aaron on Wednesday night that from a precedent standpoint, the last time that the Bills were a 2 seed hosting a game at home with sub-zero temperatures against a rookie quarterback with an awesome defense, we scored a touchdown the first 7 times we had the ball. So, like that, obviously that's what's going to happen again here this weekend.
Here's the problem though.
Yeah.
Daquan Jones ain't Daquan Jones anymore. And it's going to be hard to score 7 times in a row if the offense isn't on the field. Like, and I was talking to Eric about this earlier this week. Like, are you sure you're going to get 10 plus possessions in this game? Because I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I shared the thing that concerned me really was I shared the heat map for the Broncos offense and the heat map for the Bills defense. And it's like, they're identical. And it's like what the Bills are going to allow you to do is what the Broncos want to do. And so that to me is like 12 play drives. And that is how you beat Josh Allen.
Either tendency breakers or some variants we haven't seen before where they're throwing some stuff to get them out of it. Otherwise 12 play 6.5 minute drives sound terrible.
That's how teams have tried to do it against Kansas City, right? You keep Patrick Mahomes off the field, and that is
including Denver. That's
including
Denver.
They literally beat him in Kansas City.
Yeah. And that's the path to beating a Josh Allen. Hey, Kitty. Sort of in that big picture, though, what you're talking about with the league, one thing I've been trying to just like talk to Bills fans about, because I keep hearing these comments of like, it's Super Bowl or bust. You're ruining Josh Allen's prime if you don't win a Super Bowl right now. But you were talking about like how close the AFC is and even this matchup is. And then I look at Ben Baldwin puts out those odds of teams even get to the Super Bowl, and he has the Lions as the favorite to get there from the of all the league, and it's only 41%, and they only have like a 20% chance to win. Like, can you talk? You've covered this league for a long time, and I do think Kansas City and New England over the past 25 years have made it kind of hurt our brains of how they've been able to do it so often. But this is hard. Like the single elimination aspect of NFL playoffs make it so, yeah, I feel good about the Bills' chances, but it's really only like 12% chance, man. And so the Super Bowl or bust thing shouldn't even really exist for franchises like this.
Especially because, and people forget the narrative going into this year. And keep in mind, I did not subscribe to this narrative. I picked the Bills to win the division.
That's right.
I picked the Jets and the Dolphins to miss the playoffs, and I picked Buffalo to win it. So
that's because you're smart. That's why we have you on. Smart guy.
It's a wise man.
But people forget the narrative going into this year was this was going to be like a reload year for Buffalo. Like, you guys weren't even supposed to be here, right? And now all of a sudden it's like a Super Bowl or bust, and it's like, oh, well, pick one. Like, pick a lane. Is this going to be the reload year, or is this Super Bowl or bust? And I'm not going to say that we just have to acquiesce that, oh, Casey's going to three-peat or Baltimore's really come on because since week 10, their defense got its stuff together and their offense is great. Like, this is not just, okay, it's a feel-good story for Buffalo. The reload wasn't actually as painful as we thought. They're going to come back in 2025. But I do think we need to give grace to McDermott and Bean and the roster and acknowledge that they lost a lot of captains. They lost a lot
5 out of 8,
right? And they're still here. They're still a 2 seed after everything they lost. So it's like
they won more games.
Yeah.
Won the division. Granted, the division wasn't good, and there was some self-inflicted.
We had some help, but locked it up the earliest in 15. Any division had been locked up in 15 years.
I mean, it's just I understand like there's expectations and you're in the window, but like as long as Josh Allen is breathing, like the window exists, right?
Josh Allen is the window.
Josh Allen is the window.
Yeah.
So I think people just need to calm down. They need to stop being so critical and saying like a season isn't successful unless they go out there and they run a gauntlet of Denver and Kansas City and Baltimore, and like just acknowledge that they weren't even quote unquote supposed to be here, and they had a really damn good season, and maybe the right people are still at the helm and everything is fine.
Yeah. And I think that kind of perspective really goes a long way to help grasp what's here. And I kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth. Like, I want a Super Bowl more than anything I can describe. I have, my grandfather's ashes I want to spread at a Super Bowl parade someday. Like, I want those things badly. But ultimately, like, this is entertainment. Like, this is entertainment. This is what we enjoy doing. I'm going to enjoy watching this no matter what. And
we watched the drought. Like, Brett just had to watch.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes into the MVP debate that has just gone absolutely crazy in this idea that, like, don't get me wrong, I think Josh Allen deserves an MVP, but it's crazy to try to tell somebody that Lamar Jackson doesn't deserve it. He's had an amazing season. He's had incredible plays in important moments and won big games and has an incredible statistical profile for the season. And the idea that we know one guy's going to win the trophy with the new weighted ranking system, there's not going to be some co-MVP and a tie in the voting points. Like, the idea that means that I had any less fun watching Josh Allen this year, or I was any less entertained, or like my experience was somehow like invalid because, well, the guy that I was watching and rooting for didn't win the MVP, so I guess it wasn't that cool. Like, it's just such a wild idea. I hate the binary way this has turned into, and people, Bills fans as well, people listening right now, pretending like Lamar Jackson's not awesome because we want Josh Allen to win. Like, I think Josh Allen should, and I think he's going to win in a very close vote. But like, Lamar's awesome. Like, I don't need to pretend Lamar's not awesome for Josh to win.
I think, and I watched this video this week because I think it was 7 years ago the drought ended, right? And that locker room video watching the Bengals game, and I watched that video again this week. And I think about, and I'm not saying there's a lot of Bills fans that think this, but there's a lot of Bills fans that are in that Super Bowl or bust mode, and Josh Allen has to win MVP, and like
we need confirmation,
right?
What everyone wants, right?
It's like, do you guys remember what that night was like when the drought ended? Like, do you remember where you were?
I do.
Yes, literally.
As a franchise, and it's like, you've had 6 or 7 years now.
We missed the next one, and then it's been 5 straight division championships, 5 straight double-digit win seasons, 4 straight seasons with a playoff win. We can make it 5 straight years with a playoff win, which is only us in Kansas City. We're the only teams that have consecutive seasons with playoff wins. It's awesome.
Yeah.
If your only barometer for success and happiness is winning the Super Bowl, well, might as well just go back to the E.J. Manuel years.
I was just going to say, like, Greg has been only, since you've been creating content, it's only in the Josh Allen era. I go back to the pre-EJ Manuel, like right before we drafted EJ Manuel. I've been making content since then, and I used to have to come on and do like post-game shows after some of those games. And I'll tell you,
that sounds terrible.
Dude, I remember it all too well. And so that's why I'm so appreciative. And people, Brett, people will be like, oh, that's such a loser mentality to like appreciate the moment that you're in. And I used to say back then during the drought years that people would make fun of the Cincinnati Bengals and Marvin Lewis because he would continuously lose in the play. And I was like, I would give anything to have the problems that the Cincinnati Bengals have. But now that we're here, it's unacceptable. And people call Sean McDermott Marvin Lewis and Marty Schottenheimer. And I kind of want to get your opinion on that because I'm always encouraging fans to zoom out and look at the league, whether it's, oh, this defense sucks. And it's like, well, they're probably a little above average, especially when you zoom out and look at everybody else. You got to always look at the big picture. And I think that's probably really true with Sean McDermott. And I want to get your opinion on that, among playoff coaches or just coaches in general in the league as we see it around. Decision-making is not great, right? The things that we knock Sean McDermott for aren't great league-wide. Where do you think he stands kind of currently among some of the NFL's best?
I think, I want to phrase this very carefully because, again, there's people that compare Sean McDermott to Andy Reid. There's people that compare Sean McDermott to the other Sean McVay. And they're like, he should have the hardware that those guys have. But I look at what he inherited when he got there and what he's built and how he's built it, right? He took a roster that had some defensive talent, but really not a whole lot of offensive talent. And he built a playoff team in a cave with a box of scraps with a rookie Josh Allen who still didn't know what he was doing yet. He committed to developing him. He committed to building a culture. He brought in guys like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde who were way underappreciated. Yep. He believed in Ed Oliver. He believed in guys like Matt Milano,
Taron Johnson,
Deion Dawkins,
Benford.
Christian Benford.
You look at all these players.
He started Christian Benford over a first-round pick at the same position.
Yes. And he was right. Right? But he's had such a great, and he and Bean are always lockstep in terms of this, but they have such a great eye for talent and understanding how to develop those talents into fitting their team. And he's built such a strong culture, and he inherited a culture that was literally one of the worst in the NFL, one of the worst losing cultures in the NFL.
Literally listed as Siberia by the pending free agents and Pro Bowl players polled.
Nobody wanted to go
and the
there.
Pro Bowl is that you wouldn't go there
Yeah.
even if they paid you extra.
And now that's New England, which is fantastic for
Which
us.
is delightful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
Brandon and I looked at like 30 million for New England. Was like,
thanks.
no.
But that's where we lived in that 2009 where you were watching. Like that's where we were living.
And now,
yeah, honestly the rings culture of sports has just made it insufferable. The idea that like Charles Barkley wasn't awesome to watch, or that Philip Rivers didn't have an amazing Hall of Fame career, or that it's just crazy, like the structure that we've built in this binary setup of all or nothing. And again, I would like people. I'll give you a real practical example, like the genuine like pity people have over like, oh man, you guys lost 4 straight Super Bowls, that had to suck, and be like, dude, they were like, those seasons were awesome. We were like 14 and 2, 13 and 3. We housed everyone through the playoffs. We had a Super Bowl party every year. Like, yeah, like it definitely, like there was a sting that all of them ended that way, but like, no, Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith were awesome. That was like the coolest thing ever to grow up watching. That wasn't pitiful or sad or like, oh man, that must have sucked. Well, like, yeah, like it stung a little bit at the end, but no, it was really cool. Like, it was great.
I look at it this way: there's people in Miami, Florida, and there's people in Jersey that don't get to watch their football team this weekend. They're going into the
24 years without a playoff win in Miami, 13 years without making the playoffs in New York.
Big ass drought, right? And they don't get to watch their team this weekend. They're going into a season with a bunch of uncertainty. They don't believe in their coach, their GM, their number one receiver wants out. Their quarterback is hurt again. Meanwhile, up in Buffalo, New York, there's going to be a whole bunch of families that are going to go grab a pizza from One Pie and sit down and watch the Buffalo Bills this weekend.
In a rebuild year.
In a rebuild year.
The year you're supposed to get them. Right.
Legitimately with like 70 million in dead cap on our roster. Like legit, like 5 really impactful big time starters worth of money in dead cap.
Now that you mention it, has there ever been a football game where 2 teams had 70 plus million in dead cap in the playoffs?
Super, like I guarantee you just thought of that.
Probably
There's
not.
this really, really, really high probability the answer to that's no.
And they're both playoff teams.
And they're both better off because of it, right?
One,
like
there
in
haven't
different
been
ways.
that many teams that have had that much dead cap in history. Like, they're just, the opportunity hasn't been there. No, it's been that crazy that now that's a normal thing, weirdly. So yeah, there's a real good chance this has never happened before.
Yeah, but let's pivot away from just I think the kids call it glazing the Bills. So let's pivot away from just that, because I don't want it to be just about that. I wanted to have you on here to kind of give, like, you talked about the Bills maybe being one of those top 3 teams. We talked about how this matchup could be really difficult for the Bills to even just get through this wild card weekend. But what do you see sort of the hierarchy? How do you see this AFC specifically playoff sort of playing out in your mind?
If we're talking neutral site, I'd probably order it Buffalo. Ooh, boy, I don't know. The Ravens are.
I got the Ravens a little ahead of Buffalo. If I'm being honest, neutral site.
I think objectively, it's perfectly fine for anyone to pick the Ravens ahead.
Yeah,
like,
I got the Ravens.
I'm a ridiculous homer, so obviously I have Buffalo number 1. But
Okay, then I'd probably go Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, which means in actuality, Kansas City is going to make the Super Bowl.
obviously,
Obviously. But like, if we're talking neutral site, I think I don't think anybody's playing better in Baltimore right now.
I don't either.
Other than Philly, I would say. But
I got Philly. That's my pick is Ravens, Philly, Super Bowl. If they continue to play the way they played the last month that we saw them, those teams looked to me the hottest in the league and the toughest to stop.
yeah, I feel weirdly, I can't even explain why, because I have no logical explanation. I feel good about beating Baltimore, Kansas City, and petrified that we're going to make the Super Bowl and it's going to be Philly, and like all the things we fixed, like the best offensive line we've had in a while. And when we're playing awesome, the defensive line is doing really, really well.
and
like,
Ed Oliver's getting driven 7 yards down the field.
Their trenches are just so much
They're so
trenchier than ours are. Like, it terrifies me.
Yeah, it's a scary proposition, but I like that you picked that. I like that you're honest with us. And Greg, you got anything else for him?
I think again, one more spot. Let the people know where they can find more.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, you can find me anywhere at Brett Kollmann. Last name spelled super German, Kollmann. I'm going to leave you with this note, and I want you to think about this because this is the one. And again, I'm picking Buffalo to win, but I also think Denver's going to cover. But if Buffalo covers, this is why. 157 snaps of 6 offensive linemen on the field this year. You know how many snaps of 6 offensive linemen Denver has faced in between the 20s the entire season?
No,
but I'm going to like the answer.
6.
Yeah,
and 2 of them were kneel downs. We have not seen them deal with this. So if there's any way that Buffalo comes out and just absolutely eviscerates them, which I don't think is going to happen because Denver's really good. But if they do, that's why, because Denver wouldn't have any answers for that. So
yeah, and I'll leave
Alec
you
Anderson and Reggie Gilliam, big Alec Anderson and Reggie Gilliam game.
And honestly, like Eric's mentioned it, I've talked about it a little bit last night. Oh, we lost Greg. I talked about it a little bit last night. I look at that Detroit game, and Denver's a better defense than Detroit. But like, if I had to pick a style outside of personnel, if I had to pick a style that I wanted somebody to play against Josh Allen with, it would be a man-to-man defense that blitzes a lot. Because I believe in Joe Brady and Josh Allen and what they've been able to scheme up, especially with those running backs. I'd attack those linebackers, stuff like that. So I think those strength on strength matchup of our offense versus their defense is good. The matchup I'm most concerned about is honestly Sean Payton's offense and how he wants to attack the Bills defense and force the Bills to tackle. I don't trust that. And that, like we talked about earlier, keeping the Bills defense on the field is the path, in my opinion, to them just eliminating Josh Allen from being on the field.
Well, you mentioned man coverage. Not to throw too much water on this. Buffalo Bills, 21st in yards per attempt against man coverage, but Josh Allen, 5th most rushing first downs out of any player at any position in the entire league against man coverage. So.
And now, once the playoffs come in, we take all the guardrails off and just Josh go ahead and go.
Throw the governor out the window.
The real question is, who gets more carries this week, Josh Allen or Derrick Henry?
Hopefully, okay we don't need to do it all this weekend. I want Josh to have a nice long playoff run here. So
cool, appreciate it, brother. This has been awesome.
Really appreciate your time, dude.
Yeah, make sure you guys check out Allbright's work. I'll always appreciate you having me on. Later, brother.
See you guys.
Take care, man.
All
Let's
right,
get right into it, dude.
Yeah, right from Brett Kollmann to my compadre in pass rush over coverage, Mr. Joe Marino. How we doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Is that even a debate? I mean,
it's right.
What are we even talking about?
That's right.
I don't think I will push back that it is a debate in the sense that it doesn't this is my same thing with like wings. Why do we have to make it flats or drums? Why can't we live in unison of the perfect is a mix and it is pass
complementary wings.
Complementary
wings.
What a weird place to take that, AQ.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, what do you need?
Joe, welcome aboard, brother. How we doing? Joining us on as Aaron and I talked pre-show, like when we put this together, we didn't realize they were going to put the national championship semifinal on the same night as us. So we extra appreciate your time joining us tonight.
I have enjoyed college football so little over the last few years. I haven't even turned it. I didn't know the game was on. So that should tell you where I'm at with my relationship with college football.
Yeah, I don't watch a ton of it. I'm only watching because our producer, Chris, is a big Irish fan. That's why he's not here tonight. He's a big Notre Dame fan. And a real one. He's a Notre Dame alumni, so he's not one of these
like
fraudulent Yankees fans.
Weird, They oftentimes Duke, Yankees, Notre Dame,
LA
Lakers, triumvirate,
Cowboys.
Cowboys. He's a legit Notre Dame alum, so we got to give him a pass.
Yeah. So, but other than that, I don't watch a ton of college either. And honestly, Joe, it gets harder and harder with Bills making nice playoff runs. I know you start the draft process a little sooner than I really don't even start digging in until the Bills are done. Like I'm focused on the Bills and then I focus on the draft, and that's getting harder. Thank God we have guys like you out there that are doing a lot of the legwork ahead of time because I rely on it.
Yeah, I will. It's Penn State and Notre Dame. I'll probably watch that game 10 times in the next 3 months. Just not going to be right now. I just have no urgency to watch that game right now. It's just, what it comes down to for me is I love football. There's no question. I only have so much bandwidth in this head, man. I just, and like I was this dude growing up, I'd watch 150 Mets games a year, every Bills game. I'd watch, half the Sabres games. I probably watch almost every Charlotte Hornets game. it's like as you get older, you get kids and stuff like that. You're like, I just don't have the room, and I just put everything I have into the NFL, and
same.
I'll get to these prospects, over the next few months.
Yeah. And when having wife and kids makes it too, like I can't afford it. Like my wife would kill me if I kept watching sports like I used to before.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay. Can't talk to you on Sunday. Monday nights, those are out. Thursdays can't be there. Yeah. Oh, by the way, all day Saturday. Yeah. Come on. That's not really going to work,
No.
So for anyone who's been living under a rock and is listening to us and isn't aware of the gentleman joining us, this is Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, Draft Dudes, so many other fantastic things around everywhere that you can find our work here at Cover One. Joe, we kind of dabbled into at the end of talking with Brett, I really feel like if anyone is going to have, some genuine optimism and belief, I think the health is a big piece of it because it's the healthiest team that we've seen. But This is the best I've felt about an offensive line, obviously in front of Josh Allen, but just in general with the Bills in forever. Where do you think? How do we sign Aaron Kromer to a lifetime contract? Like, can I contribute to that? Is there like a fund I can give money towards?
Listen, yeah, I mean, as much Kromer as we can get, the better. You never know. Like these coaches, like they jump around so much. It seems like he's really happy in Buffalo. I think the only thing competing with the longevity of Aaron Kromer in Buffalo is, when he wants to retire. So hopefully that's not anytime soon, because he's doing a heck of a job, man. This has been fun to watch. Like obviously this group to develop, and what we've seen. Deion's playing the best football of his career. Spencer Brown's become like a legit top 5 right tackle.
I got to give you real quick, not to interrupt you. I got to give you some credit because Greg and I were super hard a year ago that offseason on Spencer Brown and frustration that he wasn't there. And you were trying to pump our brakes and tell us that whole time, like, give this guy time, the surgeries, like there's a lot there. And boy, were you right, Joe.
Well, the ceiling is worth it.
We're all winners because we're fans of the Buffalo Bills and we have a freaking good right tackle in Spencer Brown. How about the decision with Connor McGovern? Like low-key offensive line was great last year. You're like, oh, let's get rid of the center. Let's move the left guard to right to center. Let's take the utility blocker, make him the left guard. Yep, that was a good idea too. That worked out. Saibo's been good for 2 years. But one of my favorite thing, though, is like it's the depth. I freaking love Vandemark. I love Anderson. I'd like
we've got our
Brable.
top 10 back next season. All 10 are back.
It's so good. It's so good. Good problems to have there. Very happy with
all of the that Black Wednesday was a hard day because of the fan part of it, and my heart didn't want to see Jordan Poyer go. My heart didn't want to see Tre'Davious White go. My heart didn't want to see Micah Hyde go. Yeah. But the only one where it was my brain was like, wait, why did we cut Mitch Morse? Like I get it was some money, but like, hey, we needed him. And again, kind of the way that he's been able to anchor, and again, nobody maybe moves the way that Mitch Morse moved, but Connor McGovern's done fine there. And what he's given for stability with Saibo and allowed David Edwards to be like a really nice, like when David Edwards is your 5th best offensive lineman, you're doing really, really well. Like, and it's such a weak link game.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jinx.
It works so nicely.
Yeah, it seems like Connor's got a great relationship with Josh, right? And that's so important, like that cohesion between your center and your quarterback. See it the same way to communicate and speak, same language. Feels like they're really on the same page. And I thought that maybe like early in the season there was some like communication breakdowns to be expected, but man, they've solidified that. I remember being at training camp and like there was like snap issues and that lasted like a week and that was never a thing a single time all year. Like absolutely nailed that whole transition and what Connor McGovern's become. Was he a second or first alternate Pro Bowler? Yes. And I don't think that's because of the fan vote. Respectfully, I don't.
I don't think a lot of fans knew who he was, right?
I think it was the coaches and players. Yeah.
Well, and should we talk about obviously Christian Benford, Gregory Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, always like priority extension candidates this summer. Super sneaky one, Connor McGovern. Connor McGovern's going into the last year of his contract. I fully expect a very healthy extension for him.
Yeah, wow. I haven't thought about that, Greg, but that's probably north of 10 per. I mean, you think about what Cushenberry and these guys got, 10, 11, 12. He's probably in that range.
It's got to be. And honestly, when it comes to, people talk, oh my God, like, what do you think Josh is going to get? And I joke, I'm like, listen, I think I think it's in 2026, not 2025. And I a piece of me wonders if him and Mahomes get 70. Like I think 65 is in play, and it doesn't matter. There is no number where I'm going to say, "Oh, that was too much money for Josh Allen." Like there's no number. Like I love the cap. I love like finding the little wrinkles we can get here. There's no number that will be too much money for Josh Allen. So the guy who protects Josh Allen and makes the calls in front of him, if we overspend a little bit for Spencer Brown or overspend a little bit for Connor McGovern, I'm good.
You know what's interesting? If you think about it, I don't think that's crazy. 2026, 70 million for Josh. I'm curious what that means for like, how does the league respond to that? Because the way they responded to the original Mahomes deal is that everyone just kept going up, right? Like, if Josh gets 70 per, and like, just stick with me here. Let's say that Drake May is like the same player as Trevor Lawrence, right? It's like, he's not getting 72, right? Like, is the NFL going to like figure this out and be like, no, we don't have to do that. We can pay him 60 million and not have to like continuously reset when they're not as nearly as good of a player.
That's what I kind of have in my head, is because you actually had a window where Mahomes was that standard, and there was a legitimate period of time because Josh signed after Mahomes, but for $3 million less, because Mahomes got 46, and that set the new number, and that was what everybody got. Josh signed for 43. A couple others came in there, and then it took like a full 2-year window, and then we started to see stuff jump over top, and then it just became like, hey, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. It just kind of kept inching up, and it was just, hey, it was the next guy's turn. But you were, not only was the guy getting it just next in line, but you were surpassing a guy that it wasn't like, once you got past Mahomes, you were just surpassing some other guy who happened to be the placeholder. I think we'll see it again, because I actually think Mahomes is going to go slightly before Josh, because cadence wise, they're set up that way. And I think they're going to jump up like a gap above Dak, where it gives a little bit of a window where, hey, these are the new standard bearers again. And it's going to be in that range where, hey, these are those guys. And then Josh is going to be right there. It's going to match it. It's going to get $1 more. It's going to get, but it's whatever it is. Those two are going to be in their own stratosphere in 65 to 70. And I think that's going to be a gap where there's so many other guys at 53, 55, Dak's at 60. And now all of a sudden it'll be, oh, we'll pay you more than Dak, but you're not them. And it's going to give that little window again. And then at some point, someone who is, like, in my mind, it would have been if CJ Stroud stayed on the meteoric trajectory last year. And it was going to be someone like that, where it was, hey, so whoever that might, Jaden Daniels, if Jaden Daniels keeps up this pace, and all of a sudden it's, oh my God, he's Lamar Jackson. And it's that kind of like, oh my God, he's there. Like, at some point, someone will have enough buzz that it's, all right, well, you're not better than Mahomes and Josh, but okay, we're going to pay you that. But I think we'll get another brief but 2 or 3 year bubble where it'll level set again. Those guys will be on their own, and then eventually somebody will top it.
I hope you guys are way wrong, and that teams keep way overpaying for quarterbacks that aren't as good as our quarterback, because it hurts them. And
it's fun to be like, oh, Josh is the 14th highest paid quarterback in the league. It's like, okay,
and nobody finds out. Look how much trouble teams have gotten into with some of these quarterback contracts because they had to play this game.
So bad.
And it really can be something that sets your franchise back, or just has you spinning your tires in the mud, right? And Bills don't have to worry about that. But if you're chasing that number, man, that's a tough place to be.
Agreed.
So, Joe, when we talk about this Bills offensive line, where is your mind at what kind of test it is against this front in Denver? Because I got to tell you, like, every time I start this exact comment, the people I talk to bring up a different name of somebody they're concerned with, because there's like 6 names that rotate along that front that have some aspect of like, oh yeah, but look at DJ Jones, what he does, and like, oh my God, Zach Allen's like a monster. Yeah, but Benito with the speed around the edge, and like, I didn't even bring up Cooper, and like just the mix of the pieces they have there. My best compliment to Zach Allen on Wednesday night was, I don't know if him or Christian Benford is the most underrated defender in the NFL, but it's one of those two. And then there's so many other pieces there. Where's maybe your biggest concern from a matchup standpoint on Sunday?
I'm really fascinated to see if Dion matches up with Nick Bonito the same way he's been all year, with like right on the line of scrimmage, big splits,
almost
Out
he's
on an
daring
island.
him that he's not giving him
Well, he
any
did
cushion.
it with Chop. He did it with Chop Robinson, and that guy's just as much get off as you can get. And Dion got twice in that last matchup, but it was mostly because the snap count was like there was some timing that was off there, but he was willing to go right up on the line against him. And Benito is that same type of explosive, bendy type guy. The player I'm most concerned about is Zach Allen, and not because I think he's their best player, but I think he's the one that's going to go up against, get a lot of run against Osiris Torrance. And Torrance is a good player, but he's not the most, agile, fleet of foot, lateral quickness. That's not really his strength. And Zach Allen's the type of guy that can really get into gaps and power through and create some.
There was a snap that Eric and Anthony showed the other night where the film almost looked glitchy because Allen teleported to the side so freaking fast for a big guy that it looked like the film was glitching.
Yeah, that's a problem. So that's like the matchup that I'm most concerned with. But I think the thing with this, like dealing with Denver's pass rush, is it's a protection scheme thing. And it's not just going to be the front five and how they win. It's going to be, how do you process and diagnose where the pressure's coming? Josh is going to deal with free runners. Does he get to those hot routes and those check down options? Like that's where it's really going to matter. And I think the more that you can kind of make them pay for not committing as many people in coverage, you got to start making them make choices. And then obviously you can't send all these bodies at the pocket and then also like have your spy element as well. So I think that they're in conflict as well. I don't know that they can rush Josh like they rush anybody, right? I think that requires them to have some thoughts as well too.
Can you give up Benito as your most explosive pass rusher because you want to use him to spy Josh? Like that sounds great to have a spy, but now you just lost your most explosive pass rusher.
Yeah, and I thought a lot about spies this year, and it's like conceptually great idea. And of course, whenever you watch football and some athletic quarterback takes off, everyone gets all pissed. Where's the spy? How often does the spy tackle Josh Allen?
Yeah. You take a defender out of the defense, really.
You're just going to play with 10?
Yeah.
Like, that's not good either,
On top of that, like, what athlete do you have that's just open field, making cuts, and, like, so much more athletic than Josh that you're taking him down in the open field because you spied?
Yeah.
You got to trust your run lanes and keep your eyes on them. That's it.
That's with football, man. There's answers, but there's always, you're giving up something. No matter what you do, there's some way to beat it. And so you just have to make your choices. And so, okay, spy Josh Allen. Okay, we'll throw the ball to running backs, right? Or Josh Allen will make you miss. Or you won't have as many bodies in coverage, and there's going to be space to throw the football with mesh routes. Like, there's counters to everything, and it's just about, having the right levers available at the right time and pulling them.
Yeah. I want to flip it over to the other side of the trenches because I think – going into the postseason, I think it's no secret. This is probably the Bills' biggest weakness this year. I know it's my biggest concern has been lack of pass rush. In a matchup like this specifically, not just pass rush. I think the Bills are okay run defense. I don't love the matchup on the interior here. And I know that you've been a big advocate of the same thing I've been saying to Greg all year that I want to see more of, which is stunts. And I think this is the time to increase that percentage. I think Bobby Babish, McDermott needs to pull him aside and be like, hey, we need to create some creativity along this line because we're not getting home just rushing for upfield. What do you think? Do you think we'll see any significant change to how we've seen them deploying this line, whether it's personnel? I know towards the end of the season, McDermott talked about we're still trying to find the right groupings and the right pairings there, especially in the interior, or to schematically how they're deploying this defensive line.
Yeah, I think about the path for the Bills in the playoffs. Let's be honest. It's Knicks, Jackson, Mahomes, right? That's going to be the path for Buffalo. And so I think those are challenging players to get too creative with your stunts because whenever you stun, I think you're obviously more susceptible to like not being disciplined with rush lanes. And now there's escape outlets and you can get outside the pocket or climb the pocket. So you got to be really in tune with it. So there's that piece of it. I agree with you that they need to stunt more. That's helpful. But what they really need to do is win one-on-one, right? Like that's what they have to be able to do. And you're looking at guys like Epinesa, Oliver, Rousseau, Vaughn, right? Those are the four guys that I think, man, those guys have it in them to win one-on-one, and we just need to see a higher level of execution and impact from those players. And I think that'll be a defining part of what this postseason run is going to be. I mean, we know they've got bounced in the playoffs 4 years in a row against 3 to Mahomes, once to Burrow. They have 2 sacks in those games. There's not been a single turnover-worthy throw by any of those quarterbacks. They have 2 takeaways. One, they're both by Mecole freaking Hardman. One was on a fumbled muff punt, and of course the Poyer punch out at the goal line last year. That's it. That's the only takeaways they have in these elimination games. So, however they can be more disruptive, certainly there should be a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully they got the right ideas this time around.
Yeah, I feel good about Greg Rousseau and his production this year. I don't feel great about Oliver. He's been up and down, inconsistent, but he's had his biggest moments this year against the best teams. And so maybe that's what we'll see. I'm hoping that's what we'll see out of him. But one that I'm interested in, and this has been something I've been really pounding the table for this year, is it feels like Vaughn is a different player than we saw a year ago, all these months removed from his injury. And I'm trying to parse the amount of, so his PRP, he's like top 9 in pass rush productivity, but it's on a super limited snap count, right? Like 20 snaps a game, 23, I think is his average of snaps a game. And in my back of my mind, I'm thinking they're just saving more Vaughn for the playoffs because I see the pass rush ability. I see his get off isn't what it used to be, but he's still able to win. He's got that long arm that's still very effective. He's a good run defender, so I'm not even really worried about him being out there against the run. He still can do that stuff. Am I kind of crazy and wish casting that we could get more Vaughn and that could be an answer to getting a little bit more disruption along the line? Or would it be, I've had a lot of pushback that more volume will just mean that he's going to tire out quicker and the pass rush productivity will actually dip?
Well, I don't think you go from being a 20, 25, 30 snap a game guy to like 50 to 70. There's probably, there's like a sweet spot in there. And I mean, that's the thing, man. There's no tomorrow. There's nothing to hold on to. So, you got to empty the tank. They know this. I mean, Vaughn's been on deep playoff runs. He's won 2 Super Bowls. I think everyone, that's what's great about this team is they've been to these stages. I think outside of Kansas City, this is probably the most battle-tested team in the playoffs over the last 5 years. Probably not particularly close. Yeah. So I think this is a well-seasoned team that has to lean into your best players. Like there's no time for Casey Toohill to play 15 snaps, right? Like that's over. And so, empty out the tank, and hopefully game script allows this to really take off, right? Like the Bills pass rush when it's been at its best, like think about the second half of that Miami game when it got out of hand. It's like, well, they started teeing off, and when you make a team one-dimensional, like I think the biggest thing that's going to help the Bills pass rush is can they score? Like, can they score like they're capable of scoring? And I think that's where my optimism comes because I'm very excited for this offense. I think Josh Allen's playing at a very, very high level, and I can watch the evolution of this offense this year and feel like, there's stuff that they can do throwing the ball to these backs. There's more stuff for Kincaid. Shakir's been quiet lately, right? I think that was kind of intentional.
Yeah, you can't just bracket Diggs anymore, right?
Yeah.
And eliminate half the passing game.
100%. That's exactly what it is. We show up to Kansas City, L'Jarius Sneed takes away Stephon Diggs. That's the guy that's catalyst for your passing game. And now you got to figure it out throwing all these other guys. Well, okay, who you want to take away? Great. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm almost excited. Like Surtain can go ahead and take Cooper and take him out of this game. And I go ahead, like, because that removes him from the game. That doesn't remove your offense.
Yeah. Surtain
I'm even more greedy. I want to hide Mac Hollins on that side of the field. Sure. They can just have him. Those two can hang out. We'll play 10 on 10 over here.
Well, that's the Pat Surtain's the best corner in the NFL. He's minimized in a game like this because there's not that one thing.
Yeah, I'll be curious. I had talked on Wednesday night with the games, the stunts, the twists. I even like what that does because it forces that other kind of alternative contain where I like the idea of Ed Oliver looping around and make, look, Bo Nix thought he was going to scramble out over there. And all of a sudden we have, him looping around there. Hey, they weren't expecting Christian Benford to come off a corner blitz over there, and we might have dropped guys you didn't expect. Gregory Rousseau's back in coverage off the other side, but I think that's the kind of stuff, and I think I think
you can get away with it, like Joe's point. I think you can get away with that on a Bo Nix, Lamar's going to kill you, right? Like you
I-
got to be more sound with the Lamar. But I think with Bo Nix, if you just get him to think for a second, that's it.
Yeah, just pause. And Chris here saying like we expected to see new wrinkles from Brady. I think we see some new Sims and creepers from Babbage. I think that nobody's thinking of him having something new up his sleeve and throwing a couple things out there. I think the vanilla that we've seen and that they even acknowledge in the post game pressers the last 2-3 weeks, I think it's maybe giving people more anxiety just because it would feel better if all of them were, we played vanilla and beat the Jets up 40-0. Like that's more fun and gives people more assurance, but it really was the same vanilla for all 3 games.
I think where I get excited about Babbage is the Kansas City game. Yeah. I thought, did he have the stuff?
Yeah.
And that's Andy Reid, and whatever Chiefs fans want to tell you, they weren't holding anything. They tried to win the game, right? There was no secret sauce that they didn't deploy in that game. And I thought that was a really good example of what Bobby Babbage is capable of in a high leverage game like that. And I thought he had the right stuff. And then of course, like I've been down on this.
Like even though they scored late, that was 35-14.
Yeah,
they had point, and they had that number.
And game script was a big part of that game, right? Getting up by 2 touchdowns. And I thought Dan Campbell got goofy in that game, like chased it way sooner than he had to. Yeah. But I've been down on this defense lately, but what I have to keep reminding myself is they've been without guys, right? Like it matters that your safeties aren't there. It matters that Rasul Douglas isn't there. It matters that, your only 2 players, the only 2 players on this defense that hasn't missed a game due to injury is Rousseau and Daquan Jones. That's it. So like, it's even nice to know that they're
like Dwayne Smoot isn't like a known commodity, but like that's a material difference of him versus a Casey Toohill. His versatility and the how low the drop off is when Smoot's the guy, filling in a spot. We missed him for a stretch.
Right. No doubt. And somebody said it might have been Ed Oliver. I don't remember. They were like, Dwayne Smoot's like a huge part of the third down rush plan, and like even like with calling things, Smoot's like a big part of that. And you could tell whenever he's available, the team loves to play him. He's a good player. He's not like a high impact, but he's certainly like a better version of what they had in that Shaq Lawson role.
He's the ideal like 8th defensive lineman. Sure. Like that's the exact kind of like he's like the same idea as David Edwards. When that's your 5th best offensive lineman, you're doing really well. When Dwayne Smoot's your 8th best defensive lineman, you're doing really well. Like life is good. You're going to be in good shape.
No doubt.
All right, Joe. So
go ahead.
Aaron.
I was going to say your lights back there. I know they're Bills lights, but they're also looking a little purple. And you just heard me talking to Brett Kollmann in terms of the lead, the whole playoffs in general here. And I know that you focus on the Bills and you do a daily show for the Bills, but you're focused on the league. And you're one of the guys like me that's always telling fans, we got to zoom out. We got to look at everything here. I want your zoomed out look specifically with this AFC playoff picture. Kind of how do you see this going from your perspective? I know I'm trying to encourage fans that this whole Super Bowl bust mindset isn't really a thing. Like the Bills have a 12% chance or something to win the Super Bowl. This is a stacked AFC field. What are you looking at? What are the Bills' odds, and how do you see this playing out?
I think the AFC Championship game is next week in Buffalo. The winner of Baltimore, Buffalo goes to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. And Baltimore's playing great. I got a chance to listen to the end of your conversation with Brett, and I'd agree with you, but both of you. I mean, Baltimore's playing the best of any team in the NFL right now, and the way that they've been able to figure it out on defense has really changed everything for that team. And I'll spike the ball. I said when they were having their struggles, I was like, this isn't a talent issue. They have plenty of good enough players. I thought they were just trying to be too multiple with their back 7 players. And they finally figured that out, where it's like, okay, we're going to play a Darius Washington in the slot. Marlon Humphrey's going to be an outside corner. Kyle Hamilton's going to be a deep safety. This is how we're going to play. It's like, oh, wow, it's amazing how much better you became. And they figured that out. So
play simple, play fast.
Right. Good teams do that throughout the regular season, right? Try some stuff. Andy Reid's done that for years.
So Baltimore's the problem. And I like that game would be in Buffalo. Obviously, I think the Bills are a really different team than they were in week 4.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they're better for having been through that. But one thing that's been characteristic of Baltimore, like you think about last year in the AFC Championship loss that they had to Kansas City, they kind of got out of their identity. And it felt like in that game, they wanted it to be this Lamar throw the ball game. And I still think that it's an important part of them being the best version of themselves is to run the football. So, like, how are they going to attack this postseason? Are they willing to just play the complementary style of football, or do they want Lamar to be like this throw the ball all over the place guy? And I think Lamar's amazing. I'm not going to say, but he's not a drop back, rip it 40 times a game. It's not going to be their best plan. And I think also with Baltimore, like situationally on offense, they do beat themselves. And I think, against a team like Buffalo, against a team like Kansas City, you can't have those negative plays. You can't have those unforced errors. You can't have those procedural issues. You can't have ball handling issues. So I think that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
But obviously it's going to be a tough game. And like I said, I think it comes down to next week who wins that divisional round matchup. I think that's who represents the AFC.
That Zay Flower injury is also a looming cloud hanging over that offense right now.
Yeah.
I'll take it a step further. I think we know who's going to go to the Super Bowl by the end of the first quarter next week. I think both teams are so impactful front runners. Like, they're so good when they tilt the game script their direction that I think we have a pretty good idea right off the bat, because the team that gets the early lead gets so much advantage in that specific matchup. Now that, like, it matters this week, I want the game script because I don't want to give them the balance and the idea that they can, pin their ears back and play the pass on our side, and how negated they would be if they have to play more one-sided. So it's important every week, but in that specific matchup, I think Baltimore's the team we can least allow to get an early lead and still come back and beat them.
What's funny, for my episode of Locked On Bills tomorrow, I went through and I talked about like my favorite moments of the season. So it gave me like this big opportunity to go back and just really think about every game. There were 3 games this year where the Bills wind up blowing out their opponent, but they were down early. Arizona down 17-3. Mm-hmm. They were down 10-0 to freaking Tennessee. They trailed going into the third quarter. And then, of course, they're down 14-0 against New England. That you're okay there, but you can't freaking do it to Baltimore.
Right.
You can't do it to Baltimore. Yeah. And that game just got goofy quick. And I think the Bills will be better for it. I really do. I don't think either team's going to mop the floor with each other. But what I do like is I think that the Ravens are the more mistake-prone offense. And so if it winds up being a neutral game script, like maybe the Bills are the team that doesn't make the big mistakes, because that's probably what it would come down to in a game like that.
For the 3 crazy people who aren't everydayers like Aaron and I, let the people know where they can come find your amazing work and what you have coming up next.
Thanks, guys. Locked On Bills, daily podcast on the Bills. I got a lot of stuff going on. I guess my social handle, what is it, at the Joe Marino. I try to share a good amount of the content, but Locked On NFL Scouting, NFL First Read. I have 3 podcasts, writing for the Herd Mentality Substack. Shout out AQ for the brand package there. So
yeah, I got to get myself a Herd Mentality hoodie.
I should probably just, nice, man. I should send you one. Why don't you tell me which one you want?
I'll get it. They look nice. I see it on the YouTube, and I was like, man, that logo looks sharp. Who did that?
Somebody really talented.
Wait, this is a big moment. This just hit me. AQ with the brand package, and then Greg Thompson titled my book.
Look at us. It's a Locked On Brain Trust.
Right. Jeez. Right. Next time I need anything, I was asking you guys. You guys will figure it out for me.
You know about this, Joe, before you go, because we got some other guys coming too, and I love your work, is I think sometimes people think because we're all creating in the same space that there's something about it, but like the work of working with people in this space is super cool, and getting to know people. Like, I bounce ideas off of you all the time, other creators in this space, and I don't think it's like that everywhere else in every other city. Buffalo's really unique in that way.
Yeah, and I think that just speaks to Bills Mafia, right? Like, they crave so much. Like, it's a fan base that, man, like, it don't matter that y'all got stuff going on. There's room for everybody. You know what I mean? Because of this fan base. So it's nice to be part of this community, and obviously you guys are awesome.
Appreciate even a step further, including our guest who's coming up in just a second. I love. Like, I think there's an insecurity in some areas about crediting other people. I love mentioning when I hear something on your show or on Bruce's show or on other places. Like, oh, yeah, I heard it last night. I was talking about, when I was listening to Eric earlier, he talked about how I thought that it was kind of weird that, Nix doesn't get pressure that often, but when he does, he gives up a lot of sacks. Oh, he's actually number 1 in number of sacks out of pressure rate. But like, that people feel insecure crediting those other people when they do. Like, no, like that's actually the confidence to let people know though, hey, this is where I got that nugget from, and to share that is what real self-assured confidence comes from.
No doubt, man. I love that. Appreciate you
All
guys.
right, brother.
Appreciate you,
Talk
man.
to you
Have
soon,
a great
Joe.
night. Thanks for your time, Joe.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Oh, go Bills. All right, guys.
Got to get them right in.
Flowing right in. We go right from one to the other. Similar to my description, that if you happen to be listening to us and the two people who live under a rock and are not familiar with the good works of Bruce Nolan, welcome aboard, host extraordinaire of the Bruce Exclusive. How you doing, brother?
Dude, it's a party all the time. Disco balls, dancers, dubstep, the whole thing.
That's it. I may have last night on the show promised that if people came here, they would see your face. So I might get some hate mail. I was just trying to get people here, Bruce. I was trying to.
I thought maybe there'd be an elbow.
I don't even own a webcam.
Skin.
Like, I don't actually have to worry about turning it on or anything like that because I don't own one. So, like, there's no danger in that.
All right.
That's a smart way to do it. It's
well, sorry to the 5 people that showed up just to see Bruce's face. I let you down. I apologize.
Jennifer created a actual YouTube profile tonight just to be able to listen to us here tonight. So I saw her in the chat. She jumped in here later.
Appreciate you, Jennifer.
So we already have a super chat here, and I'm going to ask you, Bruce. This gentleman, he has a deranged handle, Low Buffa. I'm not sure who that is.
It's Chris Sapp. It's Chris Sapp.
Do I
know.
need to microwave my steak?
I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I feel like you might as well just stick your own head in there if you're going to do that, because you're going to have roughly the same impact. We'll stick my head in there, in fact, because you're going to have roughly the same impact. Please don't microwave your steak.
We've gotten to the point
you can.
We don't
air fry
even
your
use
steak
them.
if you'd like to heat it up.
I was just going to say air fryers. Well, we don't even. Our microwave has become an additional cabinet in our house. We just store bread and stuff in our microwave. We don't use it.
I watched a legit chef do a video who had the exact same reaction that I still have. I still don't believe it because I haven't tasted it myself, about like how insane it is. You can't cook a steak in an air fryer, and watched her do it and watched her eat it, and was like, I can't, my brain can't process the fact that this is as good as what it is. It makes no sense. I don't like it. So yeah, I don't know that I'm going to try it. I don't have I can't risk I can't expose myself to that much risk of
not during the playoffs, at least.
Trying that not during I'm on a really hot run right now. My steak's
a Pro Bowl level steak.
There you go. Perfect. That is a Pro Bowl. During the skills competition, I may air fry a steak.
Pseudo football.
I hope your butcher of yours has been picking out just the finest month's worth of steaks.
He's hot
up ahead
on
here.
a hot streak right now. On a hot streak right now.
I hope he knows what the stakes are. Pun totally intended.
Oh, well played.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like it. All right, Bruce. So I apologize. We enjoyed the trenches with Mr. Joe Marino, but we saved some of the juicy skill position meat just for you.
Okay.
Do you think that the Broncos are going to allow the Bills to sacrifice Patrick Surtain by just letting him hang out over on the corner with Mac Hollins? Do you think they're going to let us do that?
No. I don't think they're going to let you do that. Now, Surtain isn't an overly travel-y corner. Like, he's not gonna follow a specific player all over the field, but they're certainly not going to give you a sacrificial X. You know what I mean? Which a lot of offenses with the backside dig, they'll just sit on everything front side and be like, hey, congratulations. If we happen to get to your receiver on the backside, then oh bummer, he's covered up. But that's, read 4 on the opposite side, and we're doing all this stuff on the front side. The Rams are famous for doing that, right? They'll just sacrifice their backside player. And until it was Odell Beckham in the Rams offense, there was really no purpose in having that player back there. And so everything was front side.
Was that DeMarcus Robinson running down the field?
Yes, it was DeMarcus Robinson running down the field. Right. So front side, it was always, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. And now it's, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And then backside, it was Tutu Atwell. Right. Or, Denarius Robinson or something like that. And so the Broncos aren't going to let you get away with that, because they're going to say, okay, well, whatever it is that their offense wants to achieve, I'll move him there, but I won't follow a player as a general rule from a Patrick Surtain standpoint, especially not when that specific player is you don't have an elite number one that's hanging out. The offense is going to force targets through. So there's a level of predictability that goes along with that. They're not going to have that. But I'll tell you what they are going to do is they are going to just hope and pray that their 5-man fronts are going to get home and are going to confuse blocking, because the Broncos have had kind of up and down. Like they have, you look at their numbers and you say, okay, they get decent pressure on the quarterback, and they just have these weird spikes where they'll just go a quarter or two and just nothing will happen, and they'll have to adjust.
The Cincy game was like that.
Yes, the Cincy game was like that.
Yeah.
And that offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals is bad. And if you have a moment like that against them, you have a moment like that against the Bills, and you're going to get torn up regardless, because Josh Allen's completely okay hanging on the ball for 3.5 seconds and waiting for somebody to come clean. And no matter how good you are, if you're Patrick Surtain, that's great. But even Patrick Surtain can't cover for 5 seconds, right? That's just, so I think it's really going to be a matter of the front. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a matter of the front. It's going to be a matter of the 5-man fronts and being able to decipher the pressures, because Vance Joseph is a disguised pressure kind of guy. And so being able to say, okay, which one of these 4 is coming, I think is going to be a big part of communication and making sure that Josh Allen stays upright.
So I'm going to give our man RJ here. He's going to put you on the spot. Bruce, what is a good food simile be for this game against Denver? Do you have a food representation?
I have a food simile off the cuff. It's like you've been in prison, and finally, after appeals and appeals and appeals and appeals, the verdict has been passed down that your final appeal has been denied and you're going to get the chair. And so they bring you your last meal and they take requests, right? And so what do? You call up the greatest hits, right? You say, I want a steak and I want a baked potato, and whatever your greatest hits are from your lifetime, you're like, that's what I want as my last meal. I mentioned on the show that dropped this morning on my own podcast that it's weird because it almost feels like the Denver Broncos game is the collection of the previous narratives of this season for the Buffalo Bills. So after the Houston Texans game, the question was, okay, they ran a lot of man coverage. The man beaters weren't working and we didn't have a guy who could shake loose. Nobody was open. What's the deal? You go out and you get Amari Cooper, right, as ostensibly a man beater. Then you go and play the Lions, also a man-heavy defense, and you dominate, right? You just light the entire place on fire. So which one of those man-facing offenses are you going to get from the Bills? Are you going to get the one that showed up against the Lions and lit them up like a Christmas tree? Or are you going to get the one that showed up against the Texans and all of a sudden you're like, my answers aren't working, right? Denver Broncos top 10 rate, cover 1, top 10 rate, cover 0, right? You're going to need to have more answers than just, oh, cool, cover 0. Here's a smoke screen. Like, you need more than that because they've seen your man beaters against Houston. They've seen your man beaters against Denver. Vance Joseph is an experienced defensive coordinator. He's going to be ready for your answers. You never have new answers. And that goes back to what Josh Allen talked about, that maybe they haven't shown everything, right? One of the things that they maybe haven't shown is the counter to things like that. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I'm looking at this Denver Broncos game, that's one of the other narratives. How about one of the other narratives that the Buffalo Bills have been dealing with this year? How about stopping screen passes, right? Buffalo is most receptions, most yards, most touchdowns allowed when it comes to screen passes. And you're facing Sean Payton, right? Who is a devilish screen artist. And you're facing Bo Nix, who's completely okay with the timing of screen passes. Obviously, coming out of Oregon, that was one of the things that Bo Nix was lauded for, was his timing and his touch and his placement on screen passes to allow for maximum yak. So that's another narrative that we dealt with this season that's coming up again. How about the Denver interior offensive line versus the Buffalo interior defensive line? One of the big conversations this whole year is when they've lost, the defensive line interior didn't show up, right? That was one of the discussions. Well, guess what? This is one of those games where they're going to have to show up. So it feels like there is a collection of narratives that happened this year during the ebbs and the flows and the roller coaster. Now all of them are in one game, which I think is just, ironic, kind of hilarious. Buffalo Bills, we talked about many years past, right? Not being able to set the edge against mobile quarterbacks and allowing Patrick Mahomes to leak out to his right, things like that. And Bo Nix is the second highest scrambling rate quarterback in football. So all these things come together for like greatest hits album, So for me, it's like your last meal because it's the greatest hits. That's my food symbol.
I like it. I got a food more comparison or just a kind of a shout out. So, you guys know what Rocky Mountain oysters are? Bull testicles, right?
Yeah,
I think
I am aware of
familiar,
what they
a famous
actually are.
and a food Denver is known for. Not what I would want to be known for, and I'm glad we have buffalo wings here versus that. But I think Bobby Babbage, to flip it over to the other side of the ball here, Bob Babbage needs to get his Rocky Mountain oysters up a little bit and try some new stuff, right? I don't think we can go into this game doing what they've been doing all year. And not that it's been vanilla or anything like that. I think they're still disguising. I think people early in the season were saying they're not putting anything on the safeties. They're not disguising. They're still disguising similar rates. But I think they've been kind of toying with this. Hey, we're maybe going to play some single high against teams that run the ball well. And that's kind of hurt the passing defense over the last month, and trying to kind of find their identity and play through some stuff. And I do think we were just talking to Joe Marino. So good teams do some of this stuff during the regular season while they're stacking out wins. They kind of feel out, try some new things, try to find out who they are. But what we do know about this team, we talked about the trenches and not being able to generate pass rush. One thing I want to ask you about, and there's been a lot of conversation going in here to the season where we didn't see a lot of DeMar Hamlin at the end of the season. Then when we saw him, it was reps against in a meaningless game. He's still kind of injured. Tough to really, I had a tough time evaluating defensive backs in that game, especially with who was playing in front of them, what was going on behind them. Where is your comfort level with that safety grouping and what the Bills are doing with the safeties this year? Because I thought in the preseason, we saw a lot more, it would be wrap up at the line and a lot of blitzing happening, or they were vice versa with DeMar, and you were seeing a lot of more exotic looks from the safeties. That's not something we've seen at all this year. And I don't know if that's something that they're going to save here for the playoffs. It's something I think both players do well. Where are you with that safety room? What's your confidence level? And do you think they should make a change for the playoffs? I know a lot of people have called for Cole Bishop to start after playing a good month of football.
I have a very hard time believing that Sean McDermott would, at the most pivotal of moments, turn to a rookie. I just don't believe it. We could see it, but he's said that, DeMar Hamlin's, going to be the starter. And then you think to yourself, okay, well, does that mean you're going to see Cole Bishop in 3 safety sets? Well, they haven't really played it. If it was something that was fiddled with, I guess, in the regular season, then all of a sudden I think it would open it up. Something brand new just feels very risky for not McDermott. Like, he's going to go with the things that he thinks are going to deliver. I would be shocked if we saw Cole Bishop play meaningful snaps over DeMar Hamlin, barring injury, just because of the nature of who Sean McDermott is. I know he's loosened up a little bit, but I mean, that's the equivalent of going from grape nuts to Fruit Loops. He's not going to do that. He's going to have his grape nuts along with me, and we're going to love him, and it's going to be great. But I think that, to your point about having a little bit of dabbling in single high, one of the things that we talked about a lot this year when it came to run defense was, I was on with Joe Marino at the bye week, and he asked me about my feelings on run defense. And I said, I will freak out about run defense when they try to stop it and can't.
Yep.
Right. And what we saw is we've seen some games now, especially the second half of the Rams game is a great example, right? Second half of the Rams game, they go, okay, we're going to try and stop the run. And guess what? They did. Mm-hmm. They said, okay, we're going to try and stop the run. Now, they got lit up in the pass game, and part of that's because Matt Stafford was on an unbelievable heater. But
and some of that is because when you, like Joe even said, it's football, man. You give up one thing and you open yourself up to another thing.
Right. And you can't have the perfect defense for everything all the time. That's just not the way it is. There's an element of rock, paper, scissors to football and defensive coverages that we are not comfortable with. We don't want that to be the case, because we want there to be a single play that we can spam all the time that will be perfect in all situations. And that's just not how it works. So when I look at the Buffalo Bills safety, I would be shocked if that was the case. I would be very surprised. And also, I don't think Denver is the team you do it with. I think Denver, 14%, 12 personnel, they're not that kind of team that you would go 3 safeties against frequently. So I would be surprised
Yeah. So what do you see though? You talked about the screen game, and that was, when the matchups were coming out and we were getting into the final weeks and everybody was like praying, like, please don't let it be Cincinnati. And I was looking at Denver and the way Sean Payton's offense, if I had to take an offense that I was going to design to attack the Bills, again, personnel, put that to the side, but just a schematic offense that I was going to attack this Buffalo Bills defense with, it would look an awful lot like a Sean Payton offense, to your point, like attacking horizontally, forcing a team to come up and tackle. I love the way Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas play in spots and come up and tackle, but the Bills as a whole haven't been good at being able to come up, stop screens, tackle an open field. What do you think they're going to do, whether it's linebackers, safeties, corners, to mitigate some of what Sean Payton wants to do in stressing horizontally and being willing to take a little less yards and move 10, 12 plays down the field?
I think it's becoming Marvin Mims over the last couple of weeks for the Denver Broncos. One of the things that people who follow the Denver Broncos were always kind of talking about, they've been talking about since like for 2 years ago. They were like, hey, who's the Joker? Right? Do you remember when like big nickel, that was like the Buffalo nickel, that was like the terminology of the day for Bills Mafia? For them, it's
like this fancy,
right. Who's going to be the Joker? They got Mark Hamill sound clips going on, and Batman the Animated Series pictures coming up, and who's going to be the Joker? And for them, for a while, they thought it was going to be Greg Dulcich. Right? They were like, oh, this is the guy who's going to play multiple positions for us. He's going to be an athletic piece that you can use as a moving around matchup piece. And that didn't end up being the case. It kind of started to manifest itself with Marvin Mims. And so he's getting carries and ripping off big gains. He's getting short passes and ripping off big gains. He's the player who you can scheme up 4 to 6 touches a game and actually get, meaningful amounts of yardage from, and maybe a touchdown, because you're able to generate explosive plays. And when you have an offense that has, a lack of, I would say, explosive downfield players getting meaningful targets, like Cortland Sutton is a good player. He's not a burner, right? Yeah. And Javonte Williams is a good player, not a burner, right? And so all of a sudden you have all these defenses who are going to start pushing down on you, right? And they're going to start creeping their safeties up. Well, what do? How do you get away from that? Well, you stretch them horizontally and take the edge, right? So then they have to back off just so they have angles for those explosive horizontal plays. And Marvin Mims is the key to that. So for me, when you think about explosive plays that can break your back as a defense, that's the guy I'm looking at, because I feel like they've kind of figured out what to do with him over the last 5-7 weeks. And I think that that's the piece that you really gotta worry about. Jaleel McLaughlin to a limited extent coming out of the backfield, but mostly it's a Marvin Mims, know where he is at all times, make sure he's got a reasonable matchup.
Well, we've done such a good job at limiting those over the top plays. Legitimately, like the Nico Collins play against Houston is the only one that always comes to mind. They've done such a good job at communicating, not letting that happen. I feel pretty good about it. But when you talk about Peyton's play action, and that for Nick's not having like a absolute cannon of an arm, his deep ball's really pretty. Like it really is.
It's just aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Oh, Russell Wilson-esque even.
The moon ball.
There we go. So here, Padden, obviously great supporter of the show, and I know a big fan of yours as well. If the Bills were a steak, what cut would they be? Enjoy this week, fellas.
Okay. What kind of steak would the Buffalo Bills be? All right. I think they would be a bone-in T-bone. Okay.
Okay.
So T-bones, great cut of meat, right? Very specific type of person likes a T-bone, right? Because it's going to be the flavor that is given to it from cooking it with a bone in, right? Is obviously a big part of that conversation. The fat is a big part of that conversation. But the key is that when you get it, you are choosing quality in your actual physical taste of the meat, right? You're not choosing size per pound, like you're not choosing any of those things. You're not choosing like texture. You're choosing raw meat flavor, right? I think we can probably agree that if you're going for the rawest of meat flavor, like I don't know how else to say this, Greg, maybe you could help me, but it's It's almost like the steakiest. There we go. The steakiest of the steak.
Okay.
That's where I'm going
I'll
with
allow
this. The steakiest of the steak would be coming from a T-bone. And so I think that the Buffalo Bills have been leading this year with Josh Allen. That's great. It's been their offensive line. Like the offensive line is what makes this work. And so I think one of the things that you've seen is ironic. This is ironic of all things. Do you know who also was very, very winning and finally made a Super Bowl and had a general philosophy that this offensive line was good enough to deal with a lot of other skill positions if you're quarterback and offensive line? It was Andy Reid. Andy Reid in Philadelphia was famous for, listen, man, Freddie Mitchell, we're good. Like, we're fine. We got Donovan McNabb. We have an amazing offensive line. We have a good, strong running game with Deuce Staley and Carell Buckhalter and Brian Westbrook, right? Like, we've got these players we can rotate through at running back, and we have a great offensive line. Listen, man, the skill positions are fine. Like, we're fine. We're good. And I think it's hilarious that, of course, now Andy Reid's the coach of the Chiefs, and you have to get through because the Bills are a T-bone. They are reliant on their offensive line. It is the offensive line. It's the steakiest of the positions, right? Like T-bone is the steakiest of the steak. So I got there eventually. It took me a second, but I got there.
I'm pretty in agreement with you, but I think it's the porterhouse because it is the T-bone with a little bit of a bigger tenderloin. And you got that little bit more meat on the bone, if you will. But I love how you're saying it because it is so much more. I think, we go as Josh Allen goes, and we say that so much on this show. But I think in the postseason, we go as far as Josh Allen goes with the protection of this offensive line. And especially in a game like this where that is probably the strength versus strength, right? Like the DVOA is Bills are first in sacks. On the other side of the ball, Denver's first in sacks. Like something's got to give. And so you're hoping you got a big tenderloin on that porterhouse of Josh Allen to protect him here going into this weekend. Because I think that's ultimately on that side of the ball. I think the game's going to be won, unfortunately, on the weakness of the Bills defense and whether or not they can step up. But if Denver's going to shock the world, it's going to be getting to Josh Allen and causing some chaos on the offensive side and slowing him down, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about how they can go cold. Right, they can run cold. If they don't run cold, if they run hot against the Buffalo Bills, there's going to be a conversation about
So I was going the direction of we don't have the most paths to victory. So I think like a prime cut boneless ribeye, it's so forgiving because it's such a good piece of meat that a lot of different people can prepare it and have it end up being really, really tasty no matter what. Because it just has so many paths.
You're just biased
to success. I make it even better.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with like a tougher one that's like a tri-tip or like a flank steak where
steak.
It's easy to mess up. It's easy to overcook. It's not always like you got to do it just right. But when you do it right and it's prepared perfectly with like a chimichurri that's just right, it's exceptional. And really, really good. So,
and you can make more things with those steaks.
There's some options with. So, I think our A+ game can rival anyone, and that we can take that all the way and can win 4 straight games. Because if we have a white hot Josh Allen and a high variance aggressive defense that's stealing a white hot Josh Allen additional possessions, we win a Super Bowl. And I think that's what would happen because I don't think anyone else's A game could beat that combination of a white hot Josh Allen and an aggressive high variance defense stealing extra possessions for a white hot Josh Allen. But I think that might be our only path. I think that might be the only path that gets us to where it is. So I don't think we have the widest, set of options that, we can do anything here and they can all work. But I think we have one that when it's just right, it's exceptional.
Ironically enough, the last team to knock off a dynasty in the Super Bowl or on the way to the Super Bowl was a team that had exactly that. They had a red hot Eli Manning and a high variance, high sack, high turnover defense with the New York Giants. And they knocked off the Patriots. Like that's how they got there. They got there with a red hot quarterback, and all of a sudden you're taking the ball away like crazy gangbusters with Justin Tuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think people think of that defense because they were able to stop Brady as like, oh, that defense was great. They were not.
No,
They were not a
weren't.
great defense.
They just got hot.
Yeah, and honestly, I talked to Aaron Schatz about that, of like looking into like, people are saying how bad this Bills defense is, and I was like, what are some of the worst defenses to go on and win a Super Bowl? And I think that Giants one was in there in terms of DVOA. And he was like, well, the Bills, he was shocked. He's like, wait, Bills fans are concerned that the defense isn't good enough, because he's like, they're still above average, and all you really need is an above average defense. I was like, yeah, but that's a different topic. But to your point, it is about getting hot at the right time and creating some turnovers and going on a run. But in that vein, Bruce, this is something we've asked everybody that's come on tonight. We've been talking specifically Buffalo Bills and really this Denver Broncos matchup. But while we got you here, I want to zoom out and take a look at the playoffs here as a whole. This is a tough stretch to get through for the Bills to make this special run that Greg and I are hoping that they're able to do. I've been telling everybody, like, hey, statistically odds, the Bills only have a 12% chance to do what we want them to do. That Super Bowl or bust idea is kind of crazy. Looking at this, the field, specifically looking at the AFC here, how do you see it shaking out? What do you see playing out? Who do you think are the top contenders? And how do you think this shakes out in the end?
Be as good as you can for as long as you can and hope you get lucky.
Yeah.
It's my philosophy in dynasty football. It's my philosophy in real football. Just be good enough to win a championship for as long as possible and hope things just bounce your way. And so for me, I was fortunate, or in this case, unfortunate enough to catch the back end of Joe Marino, because he stole my line, which is that I think Bills Ravens, assuming the Bills are able to take care of business against Denver, I think Bills Ravens, the team that wins that is going to be the team that got hot, because you need to be hot to beat the other ones. Ravens need to be hot to beat the Bills. Bills need to be hot to beat the Ravens. So that team is naturally going to be the hot team. And the hot team is the team I'm going to take. So that's the reason why I get there. I get there because if you see the same Ravens game that you saw week 4 against the Buffalo Bills, next week, if the Buffalo Bills get there and beat the Ravens take care of business, the Bills take care of business, and you see it week 4, I'm going to go, okay, Ravens, I'm all in there. I think that version of the Ravens can beat the Chiefs. And
Agreed.
if you don't see that, if you see a absolute shellacking like you've seen sometimes, where Sean McDermott just occasionally just has Lamar Jackson's number, right? There are moments where he just can't do it. And if Henry just can't get going, right, then I'm going to come out of that game going, guys, I don't want to jinx this, but like, is this it? Like, is this the year? Like, could I really do this? Like when Jonathan Taylor goes off for a couple touchdowns in the wild card round for me in Dynasty, I'm like, I turned to my wife and I said, we said all year long, I don't think it's the year, but maybe it's the year. And so that's the way I would feel if that happened.
Yeah. I like it,
man. All right, Bruce. So like we said earlier, I believe there's 3 people listening who do literally live under a rock, and this is the first time that they've ever heard you speak. Let them know where they can find your fantastic work.
Unlike Joe and unlike these people, I don't really do anything aside from the podcast, and I write an article occasionally for Buffalo Rumblings. So you can follow me on social at Bruce Exclusive, and my show, just the Bruce Exclusive, can be found every Thursday, and it drops wherever you find your podcasts, and it's delightful and fun. And I added a Captain America line to the intro today, so that was fun too.
I was gonna say, you sell yourself short that all I do is podcasts. You also do musical podcasts, and you fire off some fire tweets.
Occasionally I'll have a banger. There's no question.
And you allow us to see who we should be muting on the internet.
Correct.
Yes.
You invented the pineapple.
I invented the pineapple distribution system. Yes.
Yeah. You do a lot more than you give yourself credit.
One of the most impressive collection of petty receipts that are out there. It really, really makes me proud.
Surprisingly petty.
I play the long game with this stuff. I actually have stuff, just so you know, if the Bills beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, I have dozens upon dozens from like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That are, like some guys like, I don't watch. I think I remember it. It was like 3 years ago. He said, I don't watch B grade football. So I don't watch the Bills. I only watch the Chiefs. Right. So I'm not going to spoil it here, but I already have the retort. Like I have it.
You already got the drafts queued up.
It's in my drafts.
Yeah. Your pettiness pettiness might be more organized than Greg's.
Yes. No, it's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate you, Bruce. Appreciate your time. This has been fantastic. We wish you all the best. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills. Thanks for having me, folks.
Thank you for your time, man.
All right. The show
banger after
goes
banger.
on
Look at
right
this.
off the bat. Our man, Sal Capaccio, joining us after a wonderful evening out in the nightlife of Buffalo. How are we doing, Sal?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what you call it when you get a little bit older and you have a TV show to do. I was just on Channel 4 with the guys, Josh Reed, Thad Brown, Carl Jones, and Tim Graham, and we were live at New York Beer Project, and it happens to be my wife's birthday, and I mean, she's a saint because she knows this is the time of year, it's playoff time, and this is what happens. I do things like this, and hey, I got to be at New York Beer Project. So we actually, I think we had twice during this week, we actually had a real nice dinner out planned, and then a TV show came up and something else came up because we're covering football here this week, and she's the best. And she's just like, yep, I get it. It's fine. So we're hoping for that tomorrow night after Max's hockey game. So it's all good. Good to be with you boys.
Well, I hope you guys get out for a nice birthday dinner because I've met her. She's fantastic. And Greg and I talk about that all the time. Like when we get through the season, the real MVPs are our wives. Like my poor wife was struggling with bedtime tonight. And she's like, oh, you have another show tonight.
I could hear bedtime going poorly through my wall.
Yeah. So the wives definitely keep this, all this functioning for us. They're the real MVPs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'm watching the Sabres here, guys. They're up 4-0, so it's a nice night in Buffalo. So jumping on here, I feel comfortable. I'm like, man, if it's a close game, I gotta kind of balance it. But it's all right. I think they're up comfortably 4-0 here with about 4 minutes left in the game in Ottawa. So that's nice.
I think we got Sabres tonight. You got lacrosse tomorrow. We got some Bandits tomorrow. We got Sabres again on Saturday and Bills on Sunday. I think there's a full weekend where you can run the gamut across the entire Buffalo sports spectrum for the weekend. So
and of course,
I'm sure there will be some passionate fans that actually do it.
Yeah. Penn State, Notre Dame at halftime right now. So
that's
It's beautiful. So Sal, obviously you have fantastic access to the team. You're around and have, I think, as good of a feel for the pulse of this roster and this locker room as anyone who covers them. I loved Matt Collins' answer to a question earlier this week about like, hey, what are you guys doing to really get into playoff mode and to ramp up? And he really downplayed that and said that, no, we're trying to continue to be the team that we're being and to stick with what we're doing. Are you feeling that sense around the team here that we need to be us? We don't need to change gears and become this new thing we haven't been. It seems like there's an odd sense of calm around the team at this time.
So listen, I mean, like we also talked to Russell Douglas, who said, well, it is different because if you lose, your season's over. Right. But I think there's gotta be some nuance here. And the way I look at it is nobody's going to deny that the playoffs are different because if you lose the game, you go home and you don't play the next week. Right. They all know that. Everybody knows that. And you're in pursuit of a world championship. So it totally is different. And it's not just another game. They say, well, it's just another game. However, I think the overlying point here is you don't change the way you prepare for this game versus other games. And you don't go out and try to do something that's uncharacteristic out of you in this game that you would have in a different game. If you try to do too much, that's going to hurt your team, right? So you just have to go about your day and go about your work day by day, hour by hour, the same way you have. And I think that's what Matt Collins is trying to say. Like, hey, this is what we do. And I remember, guys, in 2017, when the Bills playoff drought was broken. And this is, remember, the first year of Sean McDermott, right? We didn't really know much about him other than 16 games, and then they get in the playoffs. And I remember people asking me and doing a lot of radio interviews and podcasts and people saying, oh my God, what's it like? What's it like? It's got to be like, oh my God, they got to be going crazy there. And remember, I just covered McDermott for 1 year. Didn't know much about him. Just kind of watched that 1 year. And I said, what's really wild to me? I remember saying, every week is the same around here. These guys treat every week the same. Like that's the first time I remember telling people, I think the best word I could describe Sean McDermott is consistency. And now you're 8 years in, it's the same thing. It's the consistent approach every day so that when you do get into the playoffs, you understand the stakes, but you're not making it on a daily basis any bigger than what it has been.
Now, you talk about that, and why I love having you on is because you've been there through all these years, and even pre Sean McDermott years and have felt sort of the different vibes in this locker room and in this building. I'm sure that it's almost palpable as much time as you spend there. What we've seen from Sean McDermott this year is super interesting. Like whether it's even like small quips in press conferences, more joking, doing snow angels with Josh Allen, letting loose a little bit more. We saw a great piece from Ty Dunn here this past week with a sit down with Sean McDermott where he opened up about stuff. In the past, I've talked to players. I've heard that in these situations, not necessarily a game like against Denver, but in these situations of the playoffs, they would get a little overcoached. It was almost too some of the stuff, the controlling nature that we hear about Sean McDermott. Do you think as he's grown, even though he's still, to your point, keeping the day-to-day and keeping the focus and all that stuff, that he's so battle tested in some of these spots that he's eased up a little bit and allowing the players, we see it in the personality shining through. Do you think that's going to shine through in terms of allowing them to just do what they do and not overcoach in a situation going into the playoffs?
Well, I think it's leaning that way, but we don't know until it happens, right, Aaron? I mean, we have to see it because I think what happens is you get in these tight situations in the playoffs, in these games, and that's been the issue over the last several years, and we know that. And I remember when Sean was hired and his first year, and he was so meticulous about everything that was going on. He knew every little detail in the building. And I get it. Like, that's what you're trying to do. You're coming in, you got to make it your own. And you got to create your own culture. I get all that. But someone had said to me one time early on, I hope that with all this is great, but I hope he sees the forest through the trees. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that in some of these moments in Sean McDermott's coaching tenure, maybe it's not seeing the forest through the trees enough because you're just trying so hard to do the right thing at the right moment, to be exactly buttoned up and so precise that gets you off of just playing football where you're supposed to be. And maybe that's what's happened over the years. And I do feel that this year, just being around Sean and getting to know him, having conversations with him, one-on-ones, things like that, on the record, off the record, I feel like that's been something that he's intentionally concentrated on making sure that he does what you're talking about, which is let the people around you do their job and trust them. And it's going to be holistic, right? It's going to come out organically. You don't have to, go every meeting, and not that he was necessarily going meeting to meeting and room to room and looking and checking in on everybody, but it feels like there is a letting go of the reins and trusting other people. Look, I mean, people have been here now under him. When he first got here and he was building his whole culture, he kind of had to do that a little bit, right? Like they don't know what to expect. But now you have these people who've been here 6, 7, 8 years, Josh Allen, they know what they're doing. So let them do what they do. And I think that that's kind of where it seems like he's learned, and hopefully it comes out here in the playoffs in these situations where it's needed.
Well, you talk about that quote that he touched on in Ty's piece about the Kale Sanderson quote. Can you imagine 7 years ago, Sean McDermott saying that, agreeing with the comment of, when I really learned the most was when I realized the head coach isn't that important and I just need to be the guy who, what do you need from me right now? And that's kind of a boiled down version of exactly what you just said, is that idea of, I don't need to be everything for every single person. I need to let some of those people do those things and allow them to be successful in the moments they have. And I love that idea of that kind of evolution and development.
Yeah, but listen, I mean, I think it's great. I think that it'll help him. I think it'll help the team. But at the end of the day, it's a results-driven business. And if the Buffalo Bills go out there, whether Sean McDermott could call the greatest game of his life and make every great decision, it doesn't guarantee anything. And, if Josh Allen makes a couple of mistakes or they drop the ball a couple of times and the Bills wind up losing, whether it's this round or next round, there's still going to be a large portion of the fan base that's going to point the finger at him and say, you need a change because you've been here with Josh Allen for this long and you haven't won. But I do think that in these moments, in these situations, he has grown, he's evolved, and he gives he's giving his team a really good chance to win the games because of that.
Yeah. I mean, you're tied into Buffalo sports in general. I say this all the time. Like, one, the way the Sabres have been in that organization, I think actually helps Sean McDermott's case. Like, and 1, 2, we went into the season And all the talk was, I know Buffalo didn't believe it internally, and I think Bills fans didn't believe that they were going to necessarily regress, but it was still a retooling year. And I don't think Super Bowl aspirations were on everybody's mind immediately. You were like, hey, we could win the division, we could get a playoff chance. But now that you're here, and I know it's a longer season, but still you're a 13-win season. That hasn't happened a ton in Bills history, right? And that you're put yourself at the 2 seed again, and it stinks to be living in a time where the 2 seed doesn't get the bye week anymore.
Yeah.
Now you still have to play a bunch of games, but he's brought a level of success that I think those fans, and I do think it's a minority of fans. We are so on Twitter and in this world where we hear a loud minority. I think it's probably 20% of people that want him fired and think he's the problem. I think they got to zoom out. We were talking with Brett Kollmann about this early on in the show of like, give me a list of coaches that you actually think are better and actually have put their organizations in a better spot than the Buffalo Bills are right now. And I will say that almost in all of sports, not just NFL.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I say this all the time to, well, I remember going on radio shows in August and people asking me, oh, is Sean McDermott on the hot seat? I'm like, are you nuts?
This is the best thing that ever happened to Terry Pegula, man.
Right. I mean, like, no, I mean, it would have to take a cataclysmic type of downfall and infighting in the organization for something like that to happen this year. Right. I mean, like, that's what would take, like, a really ugly year in a lot of different ways for that to happen. And that, of course,
like,
did not
like
happen.
the Jets or something.
Right.
Just confused.
Right.
Oh, like picking
Because,
to be a division championship, having your quarterback be healthy the whole year, and finishing 5-12. If Sean McDermott finished 5-12 with a healthy Josh Allen and had that, by all means,
then he would be on the hot seat. I don't even know if he would be gone after that because of what I'm about to say, which is, I would say this to people. I'd say, listen, are you nuts? I said, do you realize the Bills have what professional sports organizations covet, which is an owner, a GM, and a head coach on the same page, like year after year, and they're producing results and winning? Like, they have not won a Super Bowl. I get it. I'll be the first to tell you that. I know that. I live here. I cover the team. I understand that. They also have, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, in their same conference. It's tough. It's not easy to win a Super Bowl. Yes, we'd all love to see that, and they've made mistakes along the way. And in 2021, they probably should have been there. I get all that, no doubt. But oh my gosh, like, we lived 17 years of GM after GM and coach after coach and a good Lord quarterback after quarterback, right? Now you actually have an organization where the owner knows he has a good GM that he can trust, and the GM knows he has a head coach he has a good relationship with, and they work in synergy, and the head coach has a staff around them these built, and they have the same shared vision. Look, the reason why they're winning every year isn't just because Josh Allen. Of course, it's a huge reason why, but it's also because Brandon Beane can go out there and draft, not for this year, but for 2 and 3 years from now. He can sign free agents and say, we're going to put this guy in the practice squad, and he's going to develop and be like a Jamarcus Ingram and an Alec Anderson and come in and play because they're so in line organizationally. Professional sports teams covet what the Buffalo Bills have in that regard.
Yeah.
So, Sal, I know one of my favorite things about you is you have a similar passion that I do for the machinations of roster building and construction and how those pieces come together. So there's 2 little nuggets we've had lately. One, we saw one of the rare moves where you saw a player claimed off of another spot here. Lewis Seen was offered a 53-man roster spot with the Eagles to be able to go aboard. We have seen in the past, I've never heard it confirmed, but we've heard the inklings that, this team heard that was going to happen, and all of a sudden you see somebody brought up to the 53 instead to kind of block that. Do you think that was in consideration with someone like Seen, who obviously there's been some time invested, but was a mid-season acquisition of our own here, or just hey, we wish you all the best. You got an opportunity to make a 53. Go, do them proud.
Yeah, that's my that would be more the way I would lead in this situation. I just don't see where he would be able to fit in on the 53-man roster. Who are you releasing to bring up Lewis Seen? Right? You look at your secondary right now, and
you're healthy as you've been,
and you're not gonna. I mean, Damar Hamlin has actually played pretty well this year. I get it. Like, fans don't want to see him starting, but he's actually been a good starting safety. He's done a good job. But even if he wasn't starting, you're not just gonna outright release him. Even if you thought Cole Bishop was going to start over
like
him.
what people want as a starter, he's an exceptional third safety.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so and then of course Cam Lewis is just Mr. Everything, and he's a safety and he's your backup nickel. And then you go to linebacker. Excuse me. I bring up linebacker because Lewis Seen had been playing that linebacker type of role for the Bills, and there's no room there. I mean, that's
people are
why
already frustrated with linebackers not getting on the field as it is.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. By the way, that is, I think, why they actually went out and signed Tyreek Maddox-Williams to the practice squad. I think they needed a guy like Lewis Seen, and maybe he fits that mold, but he's called a linebacker instead of a safety. Here's what I do think is interesting, though. I also think that they're probably very comfortable with what they've seen from Cole Bishop. I know they're very comfortable with what they've seen from Cole Bishop. They're very encouraged, at least, from what they've seen. Yep. And Lewis Seen wasn't going to be elevated, wasn't going to have a spot, I should say. Maybe there's a chance he could have been elevated just to help out and have that extra guy.
Practice squad injury came up or something, or even as special teams injury.
Yes, that backup dime safety, kind of like Jordan Poyer. But I think maybe that's Cole Bishop now. Maybe they felt comfortable enough with Cole Bishop, what he was doing. They said, you know what? Good luck to you, Lewis Seen. You did an awesome job coming in here and helping us all year. And good for Lewis Seen, by the way, to get that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, go ahead.
I was going to say that the one spot that isn't, crystal clear and healthy in this spot, we saw a little thing come up with Brandon Condrington. We know hamstrings are very often not immediate response things. If they're going to be safe, you could have it there. We had a whole fun debate in the Cover One staff chat. I was saying, hey, how often do we actually see, the punt bounce be a thing? Just go for a block every time. Don't even put anybody back. Of course, I think when it might have been Aaron put out a tweet or whoever it was, every single reply was, "Oh, Micah Hyde, fair catch person." What do you think we're going to do at return? Is it just Khalil Shakir being the Micah Hyde to play it safe and wave and fair catch it? Or do you think that Codrington's, I saw him go from did not participate to limited. Is that close?
He was at practice. He took a couple of reps. I did not see him catch a punt. He was out there. I was
going to say, you tweeted that out that you didn't see an actual punt catch.
He didn't actually catch the punt, but he was on the field during the punt drill. If that makes sense. It's I apologize. I can't go more into detail a lot of times.
No.
If you guys know, you know what I mean? And we just have a lot of rules with reporting, so I want to make sure I want to make sure I say it right without, crossing any lines. But I can tell you that he was on the field. That he was limited. I didn't see him catch a punt. The way I look at it is you do have two legitimate punt returners as options behind him. Number one is Khalil Shakir. I would say, Greg, though, as much as Khalil is more of a punt catcher, he is still a punt returner. I think if you put Khalil back there, hey, if he can return the ball, you return the ball. You don't have
somebody
to.
Is Josh running in the playoffs. Like, hey, it's playoff time. There's no rules now.
That's right. Just, hey, man, you're trying to get some yards. And I think they trust Khalil Shakir in that sense. I think the other one would be KJ Hamler. KJ Hamler has punt return experience. And the question there would be, do you elevate KJ Hamler to use an elevation for him for that particular spot? Because let's remember, Codrington is a backup corner, right? Yeah. You already have Jamarcus Ingram missing 2 days. I don't know where that's going to go. He's missed 2 days with a personal issue. So who knows? We hope everything's okay with Jamarcus and his family and anything else going on in his life, but he hasn't been at practice. So you do wonder if you're a little thin at that spot, what you have to do, if that's going to be the case. You hope that Codrington could be ready to go on Sunday. He's the number 4 in the league in punt return average, over 11 yards a return. I would say, though, that, it's encouraging he was out there. He said, we'll see when talking about it. The one good thing, though, and optimistically would be, it's not like he has to game plan and practice on defense, right? That's not what he does. So
specific.
If there's a guy that can just okay, if you can just be ready Sunday morning, you're ready Sunday morning, right? Then you just put him back there and he can return punts. So I think they can play this out as long as possible. Now, who knows? I'll have Sean McDermott on WGR with me tomorrow for his weekly radio interview. And I'll ask him, as I always do, if he's ruling anybody out, and he could very well rule Brandon Codrington out. My guess is he'll say, we'll see how the weekend goes, and it'll be listed as questionable.
Yeah, that's a great point on that. That could be a game time type decision for him. In that vein, and actually you brought up a point that I didn't really think of, because I was thinking, all right, if Codrington can't go, not that you want him to go, right? He's a good returner. I think you're going to need that in the postseason here. But if you can just defer to Khalil Shakir for a game, it kind of gives you some flexibility in what they can do in the call-ups for this week and what they're going to do with that. But to your point, if the unknown of Jamarcus Ingram, you might have to use one of those call-ups. And if Codrington's out, just to fill that backup cornerback spot, that could be something. But I wanted to get your opinion on where you think that is. We saw the Bills bring Elianku back here this week. We know that they're is a little bit of questions about that interior offensive line against the interior defensive line. Would he be a guy that you're thinking is going to be a call up? Where do you think they're going to use these call ups here this week for this Denver matchup?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it hinges on Codrington. Now, if Codrington, I don't think Daquan Hardy or Takori Couch will be ready for something like this. Those are your two reserve
Hardy
corners.
was the one that came up just because in theory, Codrington is also a returner and cornerback, and I guess in theory, Hardy.
This is a great time to have Cam Lewis though, as that versatile utility.
Yes. I would say this though, guys. Like I would be stunned if the Buffalo Bills put Daquan Hardy back to return punts for his first ever time in the NFL in a playoff.
Not in a playoff.
Like so to me, that's not going to happen. I think they're out of the equation. If you don't have Codrington, I do think you look to maybe Kareem Jackson, because then you could allow Cam Lewis to become more like a Jamarcus Ingram nickel. You know, Jamarcus plays nickel and dime also, right? He's that guy. So maybe Cam concentrates more on that. He's also your safety. So you do have a little flexibility because those guys have flexibility. Kareem Jackson, even though he's not a corner, because Jamarcus is a corner, well, guess what? Kyrie Elam has been inactive, so he all of a sudden becomes active. That's really the answer. That's what happens. Yeah. Kyrie Elam becomes an active player in your game day roster if you don't have Jamarcus Ingram.
Which is a great luxury. I know fans are frustrated that he's a bust of a pick, but what a great luxury to have a Kyrie Elam as a potential game day active or your third corner if you're injured.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what happened last year in Pittsburgh, and he came up with the interception, if you remember, in the playoff game. And then, I do wonder about like where else they might do that. And I wonder if they want something more on the D line. You have to remember they already have 6 defensive tackles active, on the active roster. I mean, do you really want to go with 7 on a game day against a team that's not super great at running the football? I don't think that that's the case. I think though that you might want an extra defensive end because you want to make sure you're buttoned up on, Bo Nix running around a little bit. You want to have your ability to rotate your line, like you normally do. And so I would probably, I guess Casey Tuhill. And the other thing to remember, I'm sure you guys might have said it, is there's no limit to the amount of times you can be elevated.
Yeah.
So you could just elevate Casey Tuhill every week if you want, or whoever it is. You still only get 2, but it's unlimited for the playoffs.
And I know a couple guys in the chat here. Ron had mentioned Curtis Samuel, Charles talking about Ty.
All good.
Caleb and those guys talking about it. I think some people maybe conflate how similar, like I think they think of, a returner, kick return and punt return is the same thing. So why don't we just put, Curtis Samuel has kick return experience, but not punt return experience. Ty Johnson has kick return experience, but not punt return experience. I think maybe they're a bit more different than people realize from a skill set standpoint.
Especially in Western New York. Doing it in this field is probably different than anywhere else.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, just looking at it to make sure. Yeah. Curtis Samuel has never returned a punt in his NFL career.
Correct.
Yeah.
He has returned a bunch of kicks, as you point out correctly, Greg. But he has never returned a punt in his NFL career. And really, the Bills have not used Codrington as a kick returner much over the last several weeks. I think they did in New England, which is, I think, how when he got hurt, actually, maybe. But it's been basically Ray Davis and Ty Johnson anyway. I don't think you have to worry much about the kick returning aspect as much. I mean, you might have to return a kick.
Exact same for Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson has plenty of kick return experience and never returned a punt.
That's exactly right. So I think you're looking at, if it's not Codrington, Khalil Shakir, KJ Hamler. I think those are your next 2 options. But obviously, if you want a little to make sure that you can have Khalil available to play wide receiver and all that, then you would have KJ Hamler, have to be elevated.
KJ Hamler revenge game. I love that narrative.
Oh yeah. And Jalen Virgil, you could have them both come up.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, and
along with Von Miller, you got 3 former Broncos, right?
Look at that. The Kareem Jackson idea would make a lot of sense if it is.
Or Kareem Jackson.
A Kareem Jackson revenge game. Look at that.
One more.
Yeah.
All right, Sal. So as we go through here and we kind of talk through, where we, whether it's nervous mafia or the anxiety that comes up, how do you balance? I know Josh made comments after the first game here in that's kind of slower 3-game stretch to finish after things were locked up about a little more vanilla, keeping a little bit more close to the vest. How do you think that translates to? Can you just flip the switch? Can you just go through there? And I think there's some anxiety about, we've had, people remember that Phillip Rivers Colts game. Aaron's brought it up as a reference a couple times on what this could feel like. But I also remember people immediately go to the perfect playoff game against the Patriots. they had a clunky run up right before it. We had that weird Falcons game that was, a terrible offensive game that kind of stumbled into there. Where is your head at on, we've kind of held it back. We played obviously very conservative week 18, resting everybody that we could, and now needing to flip that switch. Any concern on being able to do that?
No, I think the team has been in large part consistent anyway, with some ebbs and flows, right? I mean, really, that's what's happened here. And I think that, you go back to me, it started kind of, you win the AFC East. The next week, you win it in the snow. It's this incredible celebration, blah, blah, blah. Then you fly all the way out over the country to take on an LA Rams team that I think you're better than. You're just not as focused. And that's something that, I think Sean McDermott really did not like, obviously, and really, that week was a big week for that team because they weren't as focused. They went out there, they didn't play their best football. They come back against Detroit, they get a lot more focused, right? Now we can all say like what happened at the end of that game is they're coming back, but they were in control that whole game against the Detroit Lions, right?
Yeah. 35-14 at one point. Like people overstated the end of that game.
Yeah, exactly. I think what happened though, to me, was you still see like, okay, they're pretty much locked in at the number 2. Yes, mathematically they could get the number 1 seed because while all this happening, the Kansas City Chiefs are still winning, right? And I think it's just hard to maintain that unbelievably high extreme level week after week when okay, you kind of know where you are, what the task is at hand. Because let's remember, guys, last year was the exact opposite. Last year they had to win every single game down the stretch. They come out of the bye last year, right? They beat Kansas City, Dallas, LA Chargers, New England, Miami. And if they lose one of those games, they're probably not in the playoffs. Like they had to win every single one of those games. I just think this year was a little bit different, the way they approached it. So I don't think it's anything about flipping a switch. What I think about this year is they have the ability to kind of play a bit of a different way every week because let's face it. I mean, this is a team that's a lot more balanced than the last several years have been. They can really
run attack of Josh's career.
100%. They can run the ball. Josh is taking care of the ball very well. The whole team is taking care of the ball very well. I think this game goes one of two ways. I've been saying a lot for the Bills. I've been saying this a lot this week on the radio, which is I do think the Bills might play this game a little closer to the vest for this reason. I think the only way Denver beats you is if you give them the ball and give them opportunities. Don't do that. As long as you kind of stay in control, stay on the field, you're going to complete some drives, you're going to score some points. I don't think you're giving them a really good opportunity. They won't have enough offensively to match you. All of a sudden you start giving them the ball. It's a little bit different. Well, how do you do that? You play a little reckless. You play a little too aggressive. However, that said, this Denver Broncos team is very aggressive on defense. As you know, 63 sacks. They come after the quarterback. They have this great pass rush. And when that happens, that can lend itself to you making big plays. And I think if they make a couple big plays early, it could be lights out pretty quickly in this game because then Denver with a rookie quarterback becomes one-dimensional. They're not going to be able to do what they want to do. You could start to pin your ears back. They already don't have a really good running game. So I think the Bills just their number one thing here is don't lose this game, right? Don't give them the ball. Don't give them opportunities. Yeah. Just make sure you're in control of the game. I don't think that has to be that you have to score 32 points.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before we let you out of here, Sal, I've asked everyone that's come through tonight because we're so focused on Denver, we're so focused on the Bills. I want to zoom out for a second and this is going to be a tough road. Assume the Bills get past Denver. This is going to be a tough road to the Super Bowl. I've been saying it all night. I think Vegas has them as like a 12% chance to win a Super Bowl this year. So all those Super Bowl or bust people need to get that out of their brain. It's hard to do, and it will be a hard stretch for the Bills to do. But how do you see not just the Bills specifically, but this AFC really shaking out in the postseason? How do you see it playing out?
I think it's hard to go against the two favorites early on. Now, remember, the Bills are it's so funny. You get 3 AFC games and then 3 NFC games, right? The Bills are the last of the AFC games before the NFC plays. I think it's hard to go against the favorites. Chargers, early game on Saturday. Ravens, late game. However, I could see the Texans giving the Chargers a good game because of their pass rush. They're a very good front seven. They can get after the passer. They are at home. I mean, we haven't seen CJ Stroud nearly what he was last year, but there is some CJ Stroud magic in there sometimes.
Sure.
Right. So I could see something like that. Jim Harbaugh likes to play close games. It seems like I know that they had some nicer games late in the year, but they like to play a little bit tighter games and kind of force you to make some mistakes and win at the end. But I'll take the Chargers because I do think they're the better team. And then the Ravens, again, they just have so much. It's hard to go against them, but it is a division game. Well, we've seen the Steelers do this before.
Flowers.
No Zay Flowers. And that's going to be a big key because, the Steelers, as Mina Kimes has said very, very well and very educated, and she said this a few weeks ago against Kansas City, and she was right. So I don't want to steal her point because she made the point, Mina Kimes, and she's right. The Steelers are horrible on defense against quick game. If you go quick game against the Steelers, you're going to have a lot of success. Well, that's what the Ravens like to do is A Flowers and get open quickly. And, that's going to hurt them. But I just don't think they have enough anyway. So I'll take the Ravens. I think it's funny that we'll know the Bills' fate if they win before they play Sunday, right? Like we'll know going into Sunday, if they win, this is who they got because the other two games are already decided. Yeah. So we'll know if they win, they're going to host the Ravens, or if they win, they're going to host the Chargers or Texans. Any of those three.
Yeah, I like it, man.
All right, so you've been more than gracious with your time on an important night. So first, big, happy birthday to Ms. Capaccio there, and I hope she enjoys the lovely dinner coming her way. For anyone who doesn't see you on the sideline with the Bills, Extra Points, the always game day in Buffalo. Let the folks know what you have coming up next.
Well, listen, I think everybody kind of knows where they can find me. If not, at Sal Sports on Twitter and of course on WGR. I will say, I'm going to give a special plug. It's the first time I've said it. I'm going to say it. You need to watch ESPN NFL Countdown Sunday.
Ooh. Let's go. Let's go.
Like
I'm just telling you, you just got to watch ESPN NFL Countdown on Sunday.
I think you're going to end up making me look cool with my kid. I just was saying the other night, William Attar, and my kid was like, wait, do you know William Attar? And I was like, oh, I kind of know him. He sponsors the show. And he was like, wow, that's cool. But my kid knows that I know you. So if we see you on TV, I'm going to even look cooler.
That's cool. Had a really cool thing we did this week, and I don't want to give too much away, but really wasn't about me, but I was a part of it, and that'll be pretty cool. But yeah, for sure. Listen, anytime on WGR, all day parts, morning, midday, afternoons. We're doing so much right now, and listen, it's always game day in Buffalo. Matt Bove, he's such a great co-host to be a part of, and he's doing his whole thing on TV, and he had a show tonight. And, he's so bogged down. He's got a daughter right now. So he's a grinder and he's working really, really hard. And we love Matt Bove, of course, and I do as well. So really appreciate him. And I want everybody to go to subscribe to the YouTube page. You guys have built your YouTube following amazingly. It's great. You have thousands of subscribers. I'm up to 10,000 something. Let's get to 11. Awesome. That'd be great. So I appreciate
everybody listening here. Make sure you check it out. We'll have the link in the show description here. Everybody that's listening here, make sure you go subscribe to Sal's channel.
You got it, guys. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you, man. As always,
man.
Have a great night, guys.
All right. This train keeps on rolling. We go from a lineup of fantastic. We had Brett Kollmann, we had Joe Marino, we had Bruce Nolan, Sal Capaccio, and now to end things on the night with one more perspective for this Broncos game, we have our man Ben Allbright. How are we doing, Ben?
Well, you guys, you saved the worst for last. You're gonna end the show on a low note here. I don't know. I don't know about that, man. Following Sal, man, it's like putting the headliner first.
Yeah, well, we got to keep I think the Mafia is going to just want to ask you about every sourced question because anytime there's like any inkling of like something that could be going on in Buffalo, your mention's just like, dude, what do you know? What do you know? So just leave this guy alone. Let him talk about the game.
Well, I'm happy to answer anything you guys want. So fire away.
Well, so let's start right now. We talked to Sal, kind of the vibes around the locker room. I think you have a great pulse on that Broncos team and around the structure of that organization. You're now in, I think, maybe the most exceeding of expectations. You guys in Washington, probably from preseason expectations to what it's ended up being. That can be a very easy, situation for the just happy to be here idea. And I think we've heard a lot of that of, the fans cheering, we want Buffalo, the locker room talking about, we're not just happy to be here. Like this is, we think we can come in here and go on a run. Do you think that's, coming through and that they're now seeing that, hey, these opportunities don't come up all the time. Let's try to capitalize.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe there's any we're happy to be here. I mean, there is with the fans in Denver, we're happy to be here. Of course we are. It's the first time they made the playoffs since the Super Bowl 50. So they are definitely happy to be here. But the players, no, there's none of that. This is the best thing that could have happened to the Denver Broncos was that line opening up 8.5 and just seeing, just having that disrespect right there, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, because look, and I'll spoil this for you. I think Denver's going to cover. I don't think they're going to win, but I do think they'll cover. I think this will be a close game. I think this will be a close game in the fourth quarter, and I think Bills fans are going to have a case of the tight cheeks, down the stretch, just because I think this game's going to be closer than people think. These guys played on Monday Night Football last year. Pretty similar teams. Broncos came away with the W there. I think that as much as I think the Bills are a better football team right now, I think this team is too young. This Denver team is too young to know what it doesn't know. Or, and so it's one of those situations where we don't know we're supposed to get run in this game. We don't know we're supposed to get, blown out. And they've shown up and they've been a team that's exceeded expectation all year. Sports books have it at 5.5 wins, which is absurd. I mean, I could not tell you guys how much I was screaming hammer the over on that if you're a degenerate like myself. So, I think this team, I think they've got a lot of confidence in themselves. Some of it is very much justified. Some of it might be a little bit, but I think there's a lot of confidence in themselves, and there's a lot of all of a sudden, buy-in to Sean Payton because, this is, again, a team was projected at 5.5 and here we are in the playoffs.
Yeah. On that note, we talk about the team is young and maybe they don't know what they don't know, but that's not true of the coaching staff, right? And how much does that play in for there's a lot of playoff experience on this coaching staff. They've been through a lot. Does that sort of negate
There's literally a ring?
Yeah. And honestly, like to a point, like one of my concerns in this is, the Bills went into the season not with a lot of pressure, and so they've been able to overachieve for the season. But as the season grew, pressure grew. This MVP conversation about Josh Allen's hanging over their head. A lot of talk about Super Bowl, right? I think fans are in a mode of Super Bowl or bust. Denver has none of that, and so there's almost like a benefit to not knowing what you don't know and being able to play loose, where the Bills, I could see them, if it is a close game, playing a little tight because Denver, you're an 8.5 point underdog going on the road. Like no one's expecting you to come in and win. And you have a coaching staff that has seen a lot. Is there a benefit kind of mixed into some of that?
I think so. I'm sorry if my camera went out there. I think I'm having some issues, guys, but I think there's, I think so. I think there's a benefit to that. This team is very young. It's the second youngest team in the playoffs to the Packers. But so having that kind of guidance there is a big deal because there's a sparse number of people that even on this team that have ever even been to the playoffs. DJ Jones and Mike McGlinchey headline that group, but there's a sparse number of people on this team that have ever even been to the playoffs. So that's that's a big part of this. I think there is something to having that leadership able to do that. I wish there were a couple more players that had kind of had a little bit more playoff experience, simply because they could say, hey, don't take this opportunity for granted. Don't think of it as playing with house money because you don't know when you're going to be back here, and I think that there is something for a guy like Cortland Sutton or Garrett Bowles, the longest tenured Denver Broncos. Neither of those guys have ever been to the playoffs. They got here after the Super Bowl, so they've never been. And so I think that it's an opportunity for those guys to say to the young guys, hey, look, don't take this for granted. Listen to this leadership. It's been there before. We know we got to put the effort in. The margins are razor thin. Nobody believes in us, that kind of thing, and go from there. And, I think there is inherent value to that. That said, again, it's not like Sean Payton exactly has a stellar playoff record.
Sure.
He got one Super Bowl. Most of his wins came in that run. And so it's, I think there's buy-in simply because at the beginning of this season, I talked to the coaching staff and I talked to the front office and everything. And I was like, man, this defense looks really good. The question mark's the offense. They're like, yeah. And so then they're like, well, we have a belief. We've got the players here. I think we can make the playoffs with this young squad if the game slows down for him quick enough. And sure enough, it did. The first 4 weeks of the season were kind of brutal, but the game slowed down for the quarterback at that point. And after that, they started to get buy-in as they started stacking wins. They raced out to 9 wins. You started getting buy-in, from the players on this. And I think that's where it is. I think that's the advantage that this coaching staff has right now is that I'm not sure that there's another group of players that are as bought into their coach because of what happened this year, where you guys have, being brutally honest here, Buffalo has more talent than Denver right now. They just do. But that said, I think the faith in that coaching staff is a little shakier than perhaps the faith of the coaching staff from the players, is in Denver. Sean McDermott, if he were to lose this game, I'm not saying he'd be fired, but I'm certainly there would certainly be question marks. And the questions become, hey, Sean McDermott revitalized the culture in Buffalo. We were a doormat. Now we're a contender. Is he the guy to be able to take us to that final step? And I'm not sure he's that guy. I'm not. And so, this year, this playoff run, this setting is really a litmus test, I think, and the pressures on that side rather than a Sean Payton, very young football team that's just starting their window.
So when you look at that confidence that Sean Payton has built and the trust that he's been able to put together, where is the fan base with Bo Nix, where you had there was, I think you were obviously, very early on, at the forefront of seeing that in the tea leaves, and that would be the pick. I know there was a lot of questions on was he worth that high of a pick, and the apprehension about what it's been. And then a very rocky start early on, followed by some really nice, legitimate development and some really encouraging signs. And now a flawless, unbelievable final will be against the backups of the Chiefs, but still an incredible performance in that Week 18 game. Where is the fan base on Bo Nix as the quarterback now, and as, we really do have our quarterback of the future?
Well, I think the fan base is overcorrected in their optimism, and that they are absolutely Bo-leavers. They've all caught COVID-19. It's one of those things where it's Bo mania here. Bo knows. I mean, they want there's the resurgence of the Bo knows commercials here. It's the fan base loves Bo Nix, and I think this season we've certainly seen what the floor is. He's an NFL capable starter. We know what the floor is. The question is, what's the ceiling here? Is this it? Is the ceiling kind of, because when he was coming into the league, I compared him to Derek Carr, and I still kind of favor that comparison a little bit. He's going to be a top third of the league quarterback, but never a top 5 guy. And I still kind of believe that. The ceiling is the question, and the regression is the question. I mean, we all, that Sal was briefly talking about it, I think, in the last segment. We were talking about the Houston Texans. Everybody was comparing CJ Stroud. Oh, he's the next Mahomes. He's, well, guys, defensive coordinators are smart, and when you give them a year of tape, a year of all season, and a year of tape to start a game plan, they start dissecting your weaknesses. And the question is, how do you counterpunch that? And so, I'm really more interested in seeing Bo Nix next year, where I can kind of really get a gauge. Okay, yeah, the development was good. We found the floor. This guy picks things up quick, doesn't make the same mistake twice. Those are all good things. Now, let's see what happens when the league gets a full year of tape and an off season to study you and pick you apart, and let's see how you respond to those game plans. So, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think the fan base is a lot more optimistic. They call me the wet blanket, but a blanket's in a dryer right now, so they'll just have to deal with it. The other thing is, the one thing that Bo has not seen a lot of is something he's about to see with Buffalo. You guys get your roots in the Tampa 2 defense. It's not all Tampa 2, obviously, but you get your roots in that. Bo Nix has never really seen that defense. The closest thing that ever came to that was the Indianapolis Colts, and their defense is middling, to be charitable. So, and he did not perform well against that, in those kinds of looks. So I'm kind of interested to see how he reacts to this, with this thing coming up, and Sean Payton's sort of allergies flaring up to running the football and how that goes, because those, looking at Buffalo, looking at the tape I looked at, it looks like the key to beating you guys is a successful ground game, and that's just something we've not had most of the year.
Yeah, I want to kind of get into that vein a little bit, and specifically with Nix, because what I was kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on Bills fans who were just like, anything but the Bengals, right? And I was like, well, I know the Denver record maybe not as sexy, and you don't think of Bo Nix as serious, but if I was going to build an offense that I was going to attack this Bills defense with, it'd be something similar to a Sean Payton. And specifically, like you said, when he's willing to commit to the run, especially in the interior offensive line, which I think is a strength for you guys versus the Bills interior defensive line. But in that passing game, being able to pass horizontally, and the way Bo Nix has looked over the last month of football. And last week, though, Greg brought up a good stat of, this offensive line does a good job of keeping him upright, right? There were some of the best analytics when it comes to preventing sacks, but Bo Nix actually gets himself into those sack situations. When he is getting sacked, it's more on him than it is on the offensive line. What can the Bills do, whether it is disguising looks or stuff like that, that you think that you would be worried as somebody that covers the Broncos? What are some of the looks that the Bills can give Bo Nix to throw him off his game, to just steal a possession or two in this?
Give him high pressure looks and bail out, sugar the A gaps and bail out, any of that kind of stuff, because he's so adept with the quick game, and that's really kind of his forte. And then, you build up enough and you give enough time, he'll take the deep shots here or there, and he will take deep shots, but so much of what it is just getting rid of it quick, keeping the offense on schedule, not taking a sack, that kind of stuff. So if you show high intensity looks, right? If you show, major pressure, that kind of stuff, then he's going to want to get rid of it quick. And if you're bailing everybody out, or you're showing big time, and then you drop back, you may be able to get some interceptions there. And he's shown that he'll get picked off. Now, that interception total wasn't that high, but you got to remember there were 4 or 5 passes that were dropped by defensive backs over the course of the year. He's had more turnover-worthy plays than he's had turnovers. Tyrann Mathieu, I remember dropping a pick 6. There's been a few over the course of the season. he's better than people think you are, but he's also a guy who does make a dangerous throw to a game, and you can do something about that. So, my suggestion would be, especially early downs, give him confusing looks on early downs. Just try to make him think that extra tick, and if you can do that, that's probably the way to do it. The run game, I mean, our run game stinks. It just does.
That doesn't make any sense to me though, Ben, because my brain has a tough time looking at how good that offensive line is. And even the backs are good. It's just there's a consistency lacking in it. And I don't understand. Can you explain why it's not good?
Well, part of it is Sean Payton's constant shuffling of personnel. Like he just will not let anyone get into a rhythm. It's your back's in there for one play and then he's back out. Then he's out there for a play and then he's back out. Then he's out there for two plays and back out. And it's, you're rotating three guys through doing that. And it's just, he constantly shuffles the personnel groups, and it's led to delay of games and stuff like that. I mean, it's just one of my biggest gripes with him outside of his end of half clock management, end of game clock management, are the two biggest gripes I have with this, with his offense. It just doesn't let guys get in a rhythm either, right? You know how the running back position is. It's one of those field positions. You start getting hot, he doesn't give guys enough carries to get there, right? And so, I think the other part of this is that Sean Payton desperately wants everybody to see how right he is or was about Bo Nix. I mean, we all saw the presser where he was, sitting there after, drafting Bo. I was there in person, where he was just peacocking and, I tricked them all into drafting JJ McCarthy and, trading up all this stuff. We got our guy, Bo, which it was their guy, to be fair, but, he was arrogant about it. And I think he spent a large portion of the season trying to prove, look how right I was, to the detriment of the team at times, I think. And I'm hoping that a lot of that will go away next year.
So a question I have, flipping to the other side of the ball, this Broncos defense, I think there's a lot of strengths. I talked about how terrified I am of Zach Allen. You talk about the speed of a guy. If you're going to have an athlete that can keep up with Josh Allen here, Nick Menito is the kind of guy that can do some of that. The two areas that, if you're going to give this Broncos defense any trouble, it seems like it's throwing to running backs out of the backfield, which we've seen with Ty Johnson, with James Cook, with Ray Davis, and it's a running quarterback, which of course we know what Josh Allen can do in that space. Carl has that question here. Should we, try to go at the Broncos right away with our running backs and run Cook and Davis and hit Ty Johnson for a 33-yarder up the sideline like we do with the Lions? Is there anything you've seen with why those two areas that normally that's linebacker play that comes up with throwing to running backs and having rushing quarterbacks, why that's given them a problem when there's so much good in so many other areas of this defense?
Well, yeah, and that is the area. I mean, specifically the HB wheel. You go back and look, both Harbaugh coach teams hit them with the wheel for a touchdown. It's Justice Hill and Kamani Vidal. You go back, it's something they've noticed, and they are susceptible to the wheel. They're also susceptible to that tight end leak on the backside. It's just because of how aggressive they play with the front five, and they'll lose that contain, that area of contain, that pause when they're trying to get upfield. And then the inside backers are just not that athletic. I mean, Cody Barton, is just not a hyper athletic guy. They don't have Alex Singleton back there anymore because he's hurt. And so the backers that would at times peel to the flats out there to cover down for that are just not prepared to do that. The Broncos' bread and butter coverages are one high robber and C3. Now they'll do some 2 deep man under at times and a lot of zeros, but that's a bread and butter. And so a lot of times you're going to have PJ Locke, who is the weakest point on the defense at the safety. You're going to have him either the robber or, depending, he could be out there covering one of the backs, and he's okay off the bench. He's just not a starting caliber, free safety in this league. And they miss that. Brandon Jones has been a revelation, but PJ's not been the guy. And so I think, you'll see some susceptibility to that. If I were you, if you really want to get this team, find a way to get that ground game going early, and then hit the play action, put the tight end right in there behind the middle backer and on PJ Locke and go after them. That's really what you want to do. You got to be careful, because I suspect Pat Surtain will be shadowing Kincaid quite a bit. I don't think that, and they've done a lot of that. They've put like Brock Bowers. They'll put Surtain on him for portions of the game, simply because he's got the size as well as the speed to be able to handle that kind of stuff. So you kind of want to watch that. Riley Moss and Pat Surtain are both injured. I mean, Surtain sprained his ankle in the Colts game, and he's been playing on a bum ankle ever since. Still doing pretty well, but it's been rough. And then you've got Riley Moss, who's come back off the knee injury. He's not quite been the same since he come back, and you've seen the passing numbers in the last quarter of the season. The Broncos defense have given up. That's why. Out of the slot, you got Jaquan McMillan. He's really the second best corner, on the team, and he'll take away most of the slot stuff. That you don't want to go after him too much. Really, you want to find ways to get Bunch to one side, and you want to try to get Riley Moss, or you want to try to get PJ Locke one-on-one. If you can get those guys one-on-one, that's where you're going to have your success in the air.
Yeah, I love you mentioning the run, man. I really hope Brady doesn't get away from it if the game script goes a little sideways and they keep plugging away. Sort of like you're saying, Sean Payton can't get away from the run. I hope the Bills don't. But for a second, I want to zoom out here. We've been talking a lot about this matchup, but I know that you cover the league as a whole, right? I know you're a football junkie just like the rest of us. And I'm really intrigued with this just AFC playoffs. I think it's the best of the playoffs is going to come out of this AFC. How do you see it sort of shaking out? Who do you think are the top dogs that are really going to make it through here? And who do you have coming out of the AFC going to the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I think the Chargers are going to beat up on the Texans. And I think it's really probably a 4-team race in the AFC. I think Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, and the Chargers. Kansas City just as much as everybody wants to discount them because statistically the offense isn't where it was. That's not what they are anymore. They're a defensive-minded football team who succeeds on third down. They save their high-efficiency plays for third down, and they still make them, right? Yeah. And so just because the numbers aren't as eye-popping doesn't mean they're not as efficient as they used to be. And that's something that a lot of people
just know how to win
for whatever.
Too.
Right, yeah, right. And they've been around. They've got the experience, all those kinds of things. But, you've got a Baltimore team, a little susceptible on the defensive side at times, but they got better as the year went on. And certainly that 1-2 punch with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, something else. Plus, Zay Flowers is a big part of what they do. But, man, Rashad Bateman sneakily has been making plays down the stretch for them. So that's something to keep your eye on, with Zay Flowers out, seeing how that works. And then the Chargers, they run the football and they play incredible defense. I think they're the only team in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken, certainly since the 1930s, that has gone on the road 9 times and allowed 21 or fewer points to every opponent they played on the road. So they are very, very good on defense. Underestimate them at your own peril. I saw them twice this year, and I'm telling you, they are incredible on defense. The offensive side of the ball and having weapons outside Ladd McConkey is really, really the only Achilles heel that they have. And Herbert, he knows how to make chicken salad out of chicken, what. So I think those are the teams out of the AFC got to watch for. I don't think much of, if the Broncos were to beat the Bills, okay, then I might raise an eyebrow, but I don't think they will. I don't think Houston Texans are. I don't even, they wouldn't be in here if they didn't win their division. They're the worst division in football and still found a way to, barely make it or whatever. So I don't, as far as the rest of that goes, the AFC, I'm not too concerned about. The NFC side. You got to like Detroit. You think they're going to be in anything. I really like Philadelphia this year. I think Philadelphia might be the best team in the NFC secretly. Yeah. The Vikings got a high-powered defense, but Darnold's hit or miss. The Rams have got the offense, but the defense is so young. And then I just don't, the rest of the NFC teams are just kind of whatever. I think the Commanders beat the Bucs, but beyond that, how far do they go? That's probably it. They don't have the defense to compete.
Yeah.
All right, we got to put you on the spot here. Give us a score prediction. What do you expect to see this weekend?
Low scoring, tight game. Probably a 23-20, 24-20 type of game. I think a field goal in the final 5 minutes probably decides it, that kind of thing.
That sounds terrible for my heart, man.
Yeah, I believe it'll be one of those. I don't believe there'll be a blowout in this one. I believe it'll be like that, but it's it's going to be cold. It's going to be tough. This is going to be one of those types of games where everything counts. And if you get one team to turn the other one over, I think the extra possession, I think that makes a difference in this football game. But give me 23-20, 24-20 Bills win, that kind of thing.
I don't know if my heart can take that. I appreciate the Bills win, but I don't know if I can take that. We appreciate your time tonight, Ben. This is awesome. This has been a fantastic show for us here. Let the folks know where they can find your good work and what you have coming up next.
Yeah. First of all, sorry about the camera thing. I guess I forgot to charge my battery, so I'm an idiot.
You're good, man.
As far as following me, you guys can unfollow me at Allbright NFL. It's a dumpster fire anyway. It's just your mom jokes. It's kind of hacky. Beyond that, you want to listen to the show, KOA, we're heard in 36 states and 5 or 6 different countries on the AM side on 850. It goes over most of the country. And then you can always stream it on the web, KOAcolorado.com if you ever want to hear the show.
I gotta say, I did get requests for you to come over to Blue Sky. There was a handful of people when I posted out the promo. They're like, "Hey, can you tell him to come on over?" So I've been peer pressured to tell you. People are looking for you over there, but I get it if you don't want to.
I have an account actually. I posted like once or twice. I need to post a little bit more. I just haven't like fully made the switch, and I kind of need to because Twitter is such a cesspool.
It's not
great. The same thing. I hate it so much. I can't make myself do a second one, even if that one is much more pleasant. It really is. It's much more pleasant.
Right.
I can't make myself do a second thing when I already hate the first one.
Yeah.
Well, it's a marketing thing for me. So like the problem is just like everybody at iHeart won't let me just do that and just get rid of it because my Twitter account, I mean, it's the largest in Denver, right? In Denver sports. I have like 200 some odd thousand followers. And they're like, yeah, we can't give up that marketing angle. Like you have to have that as far as, so that's sort of been the problem as to why. It's like I've created my own monster, I guess, when it comes to that. But I hate it. Social media quits being fun after about like 5,000-10,000 followers. Like it's just not fun anymore. So
Yeah, we're in that, like we're not as big as you, but that's why the people are like, hey, why don't you just get rid of it entirely? And it's like, yeah, we kind of need it for what we do.
It kind of helps. It kind of helps with the show.
Yeah.
So,
I tell you though, when I do get out of this, I'm dumping it. I'm going to an island, and none of y'all will ever hear from me again. And I'm sure there's some people out there celebrating that right now. But
that's right.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
Let's hope for a really entertaining, fun game this weekend. One that doesn't give me heart palpitations, but hopefully gives us a fun game to watch.
Well, conspiracy theory from the Broncos side. Bill Vinovich is the referee here. Now he's a let him play referee, but he's also the guy who did not call the Nicole Kollmann when Sean Payton was head coach of the Saints and Kollmann had the DPI. Yeah, Bill Vinovich was the head on that. So there's some Broncos side of the house. There's some conspiracy stuff for the refs. So just a little tidbit stuff for you there.
Listen, wait until Josh sells one of his hits and flop because he does play. He's really good at flopping.
He's very good flopper.
Wait until he does one of those, and people will be all in their feelings.
That's why I'll call him Le Joshua Allen.
There you go. I like it. Bring on the hate.
Appreciate you,
there
man.
We go.
All right,
guys.
We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate
Take
your time,
care, man. Thanks, man.
Yep.
All right, man. We made it. We have been live on air for 2 hours and 25 minutes straight. I gotta say,
we love to listen to ourselves talk. That's it. I'm sorry.
I do love the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
I do love the sound of my own voice.
I hate actually the sound of my own voice. When I do have to play this stuff back, it actually pains me to hear me.
You want to know what? Shout out to you. You did so much work to get this set up, getting this awesome lineup of guests. Kudos to you, my man. This was a fantastic creation. Gave us really cool new graphics and background info and thumbnails and all kinds of cool stuff. You did so much work to get this set up. This was a huge success. Everybody in the chat, what you owe us is a thank you to Aaron by pressing the like button. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. But kudos to you, my man. You did an awesome job. Knocked this out of the park.
I appreciate it. My thank you is everybody that showed up. The numbers have been awesome. We can see them here live. The chat has been fantastic. You guys are great to us. We do it for you. I said it at the top, Greg, I'm a fan too. Like I have been on YouTube looking for every Buffalo Bills piece of content. So that's why we do this, because I know that you guys are just fans just like me, and you can't get enough right now of playoff content. And so I want to bring it to you. And Greg, thanks to you, man. I know you've been traveling a lot, doing a lot of stuff. So taking 2 nights out to come here and just talk Bills with me, I appreciate it. I appreciate the friendship we've created. And really the friendships our network has allowed us to create. Again, a guy like Brett Kollmann to agree to come on and talk to us. Ben Allbright, like you said, his following. Sal, who I've been listening to Sal since he was doing it in Florida, streaming on Justin TV, and now he's one of the biggest names in Bills, and that those guys are willing to come on and spend time with us is so cool. And really all of that's possible because of you guys as fans have propped up Cover One as a source that people want to come on and be on because it's also valuable to them. So appreciate really everyone. My heart's full of appreciation to everyone. I hope that we can continue on this, man. I don't want to stop making Bills season content. So hopefully the Bills take care of business better than Ben said too. I hope that it's not a super close game. I hope we get closer to covering the spread. Do not want that this early in the playoffs, because if they're going to make the run I think they're capable of, we're going to have enough close traumatic experiences along the way. I want this one to be a little easier.
That's right. That's right. I think this can be special. I think they have the potential and the capability to go on a great run here, and that would start this weekend here. So make sure you're checking out all the work that we did. Great preview show last night. We had the fantastic Cody Alexander. Coach A was on with us last night. Eric and Anthony did a fantastic film room. All the guys at Air Raid Hour, Under Review, Roundup, everybody, Disguise coverage, all the lineup here at Cover One. Make sure you're checking out all the different work that's going on here. We appreciate everything that you do. Anything else for the people here, Aaron, before we close things out?
No, the last thing is poor producer Chris here saying it's a 17-17 game and Penn State's driving. Talking about hearts and games. Poor producer Chris is he's having a night right now.
His heart is beating full speed right now.
Yes.
17-17, Penn State in the red zone. 8 minutes left.
First and goal. Yeah.
National semifinal here, Notre Dame and Penn State. Just a really fun college football game going on.
Yeah. So shout out to
you guys hanging out here. Yeah, for everybody watching us on the second screen, we appreciate you guys watching us while we're checking out this game as well. But the chat has been awesome. You guys have been fantastic. We appreciate you all your support so much. But on behalf of producer Chris, who is normally here in the background, but will be doing all the post-game production work, and my man Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are